members, Lucille Cody, Nelson Yellowman, Lori Mon, Steve Black, and Mary Shumway. And our Superintendent Nelson, and Matt Kais with Human Resource and other various business administration. So I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
Approve the agenda.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Okay. We'll turn the time over to Superintendent for the San Juan Quest update.
Awesome. This month I thought I would just share with you some of the steps we are taking and some of the things that we've been doing just recently that we're very excited about. I did give each of you a book on coherence, and I don't know if you've been able to get very far into it, but we have finished this now as a district read at the district office level with administration, and it has provided kind of a starting point, a kind of a calibrating point of us all being together with a common focus, and has given us the ability now to kind of look at our next steps of where we want to go. We have our San Juan Quest model, and we know, we really believe that we've done a lot of positive things in recent few years, but we also know we've got to go much deeper. We have to provide much more clarity with our staff across the district. And so this has provided an opportunity for us to just start a strategic steps process. And I'm going to keep the board updated as we go. I think I've already even mentioned this to you prior to this meeting. But we are planning now, and it's district administration, to meet a number of times to bring school administration in now and to really look at where we think we need to go and what steps need to happen, and to enact that plan throughout the summer and even all through next year, and try to make sure that when we're done, this book talks, when this book talks about coherence, it's talking about the individuals of the organization all having clarity in the mission of the organization, the goals of the organization. They can do what they call talk the walk. When you talk to them, they know they can articulate those goals. They can articulate the things that the clarity in their role and their responsibilities and how the whole organization works together. We know we've got a lot of work to do. We really do feel like, though, that some of the steps we have taken prior are going to benefit us greatly in taking these next steps. And I appreciate you supporting those, because you, as a board, you've been very much involved in the San Juan Squared model. You heard it was 2 or 3 years ago now where you approved it, and there was a presentation at this point, and you've had updates on it as we've gone along. And hopefully you've seen things that have come about through our steps. School leadership teams is a great example, as we've brought those in the last few years. And in our board presentations, you'll often hear, I'm surprised how often you hear a principal refer to the work of their school leadership team. And that's just one indicator of, some of these things are really grabbing hold, and they're becoming part of our culture, and it's very positive. And research says that's what the indicators we should be looking for. So specifically, some of the steps we're going to take is we're going to come together as an administrative team. We're bringing in our district administration team. We're starting to have discussions. We plan on having a number of training days and strategic work days throughout the summer. And we plan on building an active plan that will help bring in all of our staff all the way through all the schools. And we're going to focus on trying to say, how do we make sure we take our organization deeper with more clarity? And how do we make sure it's not a one and done thing? How do we really embed it into the culture of our district and our organization, as this book refers to? So I'll definitely be excited to come back with updates as we have these training days and as more strategic plans are explicitly developed. It'll be exciting to bring those back to you. But I definitely want the board to be a part of this process, because it's critical we are aligned all the way through, top to bottom through our organization. And so while it wouldn't be feasible to have you at all these work days and everything, I think it's going to be a key role of mine is to keep you updated, keeping you current with things we're doing, and allow at this point for there to be input into those things as they happen. So just wanted to bring that and share that with you.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Okay, the COVID reentry, 10 minutes. I'm going to turn the time over to the superintendent.
10 minutes. We'll see if we can get through it.
If not, I'll give you 2
We'll
more.
see. Well, might give me an extra minute there. Yeah, we've looked at this every month. I would like to just report back to you this month of where I can kind of see things standing. Our river region is very similar to last month. Those students are still in a virtual-only learning environment. Our teachers are still on homebound. This is by Navajo Nation health order, that there is a stay-home order in place. That's through the 15th now, so there's a chance that might be lifted. They're talking about possibly that being lifted. If it is, we will bring our staff back the way we had them at the beginning of the year as soon as possible. I mean, immediately if that lifts. We're far more effective having our staff in the building. So we do have some staff in the building, and we do have some students in the building in the river region. Our IEP students are allowed to come to the building now, and teachers that serve them are in the building, and some teachers are there just out of choice. So, but we're trying to meet the needs of that health order. In the mountain region, we are still navigating as best as we can with our two models, mostly in our in-person model. We do have students in option 3, but we're still moving forward with that. We are continuing to be involved in sports. We are continuing to be involved in the Test to Play program. We test every 2 weeks. We tested again yesterday with no positives, so that was very encouraging. So anyway, the update across the county is encouraging. I have not received a county update for a couple of weeks. I don't know exactly why that is, but I do know that the numbers statewide, and I think are reflective of our county, are very low, and are coming down at least. That's encouraging. There has been some updates in the school manual, and I would report on those now. We've been able to, we will now, as of just recently visiting with the health department here locally and looking at the updates in the school manual, we will be looking at no masks on the playground in our elementary schools. That's being allowed at this point. Still masks in the building.
Is that happening right now? Today, do kids have masks on in the playground?
I don't, we have Jay here. You'd have to speak to that.
They do. Anybody that's not able to do social distance, we have masks on. Those that are, they don't have to wear them.
But we will be changing that. They'll
So
go to no masks on the playground.
Tomorrow?
Yep. Tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Today, let's have
You
bring them all back.
Call
to
down
school.
there, yeah.
Today.
So anyway, yes, as of tomorrow. We also, and this has kind of been by our own plan, we also feel and are asking for board support to revisit our visitors and parents in the building. We feel like now is an appropriate time, so I'm making a recommendation to the board that if it's with your support, I will work closely with Julie, who will work closely with administration, and we will revisit that. That will tie into a number of areas. We are approving for the rest of the year. We have proms are scheduled, our activities are scheduled. We are very much, we are set to allow field trips to roll. Visitors and volunteers, if we open that up some, will allow some parent volunteers to join those field trips, just similar to what they've done in prior years. Sure, they'll have to follow whatever precautions are in place. There could be masks involved in that. We'll see what's required at the time, but we are asking support to be able to revisit that and see about bringing our parents in, our visitors in, and try to find the boundaries there that we feel are appropriate, and go from there. Now, I know, board, you've received a lot of attention on this recently, and I've received a number of letters and attention as well. Trying to make a little sense of this, some things that I would say as recommendations from Superintendent Nielsen would be, I understand the parents' point of view. Many of the parents are very frustrated with the mask mandate. There's no question. I've received a lot of concern just recently of why do we wear masks in schools, and why, and can we lift that mandate? And it's time to lift that mandate. I would again just let the board know that as of right now, that is still an expectation, even in the latest legislation that was put in place, that they're going to lift the mask mandate as of April 10th, but not schools. Schools is an exception to that. In that bill, it's listed as an exception. So we still will be under a mask mandate in schools, and there are some exceptions to that, but overall, the mask mandate is still in place. You know, and I look at that and I see a number of concerns. If the board did feel inclined to some reason to go out, so to speak, and not comply with this, I really don't know all of the far-reaching consequences. I really don't. I do think there's some pretty obvious ones. Some of the ones I think that are potentially there very quickly would be that, you know, we could very possibly be in some areas of liability increase. If, I think we'd have a few teachers that would immediately say, I'm not coming to work. It's obvious that the experts in the state say that's not safe, and I'm listening to them, and they're the experts in this area. We would then have to decide how we're handling that. If someone were to get sick, a student, a staff member, I don't know if our liability again would greatly increase as far as them being able to claim that again we put them in an environment that was not considered safe by the leading experts in the state. I think there could be, let's see here, we might jeopardize our sports and our activities. There's a possibility that other districts would choose to be concerned about, you know, our athletes and our participants in those activities. There's a possibility of losing funding. I really don't know if it'd be that far reaching or not, but I have seen that in a time or two, an area or two. And probably one of the biggest things I think is we really, I worry about losing support of state officials that have worked very carefully with our district. Now, I know they will do their job and their responsibilities, but we at times receive support from state officials that are above and beyond their duties and their responsibilities. I know there's times they send out information and then I get a direct phone call just saying, hey, just wanted to draw your attention to something. That's what I would refer to really being mindful of San Juan and looking out for us. So anyway, I look at all the fallout, and those are the things that I think we have to wrestle with. Those are the variables that are in play. I understand parents are frustrated when I see the talk of a petition, or I hear the talk of the no mask mandate. I understand it. The last thing, I don't find this mask tremendously comfortable and nice. I look forward to the day it's not on my face, I'll tell you that. Even though I'm probably better looking with a mask on, but I just look forward to the day I don't have one on. But I hope the parents will also realize there are a lot of variables playing out here that really make this a difficult situation for you as board members, that you can't just look at it from one perspective. You have to look at it from a lot of different sides. I remember last year at this time, this was about the time that we closed schools down and we went to home instruction. And we thought it was 2 weeks, turned into the entire remainder of the year. And it wasn't 2 or 3 weeks when I, at that time, got a lot of concern from parents saying, we want to go back to school. And I think if we would have said, okay, let's come back to school, we'll wear masks, I think we'd have got a 95% plus or more of students in our building. They just wanted back. We weren't allowed to. The mandate didn't allow us to. But my point is, it was a time when we were all at home. That was a difficult time as well. So anyway, I realize this is a pandemic. There's lots of variables. I have a lot of empathy for our students, our parents. I have a lot of empathy for board members who have to wrestle with these issues. But I do point out that I think there's a lot of issues here that maybe every parent that might sign a petition or might have comments may not be looking at those all through the same level of responsibility that you have to. So anyway, I turn that over to you. That's kind of the update on the COVID, and we'll go from there.
Steve, do you have a comment?
I have a question.
Okay, 1 second, Nelson. I'll turn the time over to Steve.
I do appreciate the time and effort you went into the petition and voicing your concerns to the board. It's really appreciated. Thank you. As I consider this, I realize that it's not the mask mandate is not our mandate. It's not our board's decision to impose masks in the school. It's a governor's order, health order. He can do that legally, so it is the law of the land to do that. And just a couple of months ago, I raised my hand that I would support the Constitution of the state of Utah and the federal government. And I don't like wearing this mask either. I don't do it for the fun of it, but I do it just because of the mandates, which are locked. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at on that.
Nelson.
Yeah, I was curious what the Monticello Elementary School, I think it was, that was doing. Is that what the playground? I don't know what's going on with that, but I read that in the letter.
I'm gonna have Julie speak to that. Do you wanna just come right up here?
Yeah, sure.
So you can hear you. And she's gonna address that.
So Nelson, specifically at recess, is that what you're wondering?
It wasn't recess.
Yeah,
They're less than 15
that's what I
minutes.
said, we did during the recess.
Yeah. So the difference is in the health order, it says 15 minutes. You know that if they're within 15 minutes, if they're together within 15 minutes, then that is a way that you differentiate. And so they are not together during their lunchtime longer than 15 minutes. There are some students that do stay longer, but they're spread out in their social distance, if even more at that point. So that's the difference in how they're handling that. And then Blanding Elementary also has significantly higher numbers at lunch, and so they've had to sit their students closer together to be able to fit them all in.
But even, and Mr. Porter is here, but he clarified with me that probably 70% of the students at BES do not wear masks. It's probably 30% that are required, that they're close enough that they can't social distance. So be aware
So are
of
we
that.
talking eating lunch or
No.
out of the playground?
Yeah. Well, there's,
Out on the playground.
yeah. Because at lunch they all take them down.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say.
Out on the playground.
Kinda
So
confused.
probably from what I'm understanding, and Mr. Porter could weigh in, when all students at Blanding Elementary playground are not wearing masks. About 70% are not, 30% are. They've tried to decide where can you social distance and where can you not social distance. And if you could social distance, there was no mask required. Monticello, with less students, have been able to spread social distance better, and they've kept the recess less than 15 minutes. Because they saw that was kind of in the manual, 15 minutes was kind of the ticker, the indicator that would put you over the limit.
Okay, Nelson, did you have any more
But now
questions?
that's a non-issue because masks are
Right.
not required at
Right.
recess.
Now it's a
at
non-issue
home.
on
Probably
playground.
do
So
need to
that's-
address along with recess if that's
No,
secondary schools
thank you for
outside.
clarifying that.
Well,
What's that?
Did
Good
Nelson say?
yeah,
He said
athletics.
anything else? Yeah, just a second.
You mean athletics?
No, I mean students, because we have secondary students that go outside to eat lunch and to, just to visit outside. Sanborn
it's
High,
gonna
you'll
be
see them
the
on the
same.
lawn every
It's
day.
gonna be the same.
So I think we need to make that across the board. I
Yes,
guess is
it'll
what I'm
be-
saying.
that'll
Okay,
be-
I just wanted to
But
make
when
sure.
they go outside,
Yeah,
they're
that
not
is,
required.
right. I think we need to be clear about that.
The fresh air is great for, instead of just breathing back your own.
But let me
Nasty
add to
mask.
that, let me add to that, and this is another area that we're gonna have to work through and decide where we're at. I kinda wanted to get more input from other districts. High School Association, and now we're moving into spring sports, which are almost all exclusively outside, has not lifted the mask mandate. So when we went and saw our basketball teams and everyone on the bench had a mask on, the coaches had masks on, that is still the High School Association expectations at this point. Now, that's not in governor's order at this point, but it is in High School Association, so that's just an area that if we are gonna work through and try to stay compliant with what High School Association, and they could very easily remove our opportunity to participate if we choose not to follow their guidelines, the High School Association. So, I just know for instance, I stopped by a ball game yesterday, just to have a quick look into that. You didn't see a lot of masks, and I saw two. But, so I realize that's an issue that we're gonna have to really work through as well, and I'll try to do that. But I do wanna gather some more information to make sure everyone's really, how they're handling that.
Have we seen those new guidelines from the high school for for
spring.
baseball
Mhm.
Or spring.
Yep.
or spring?
Looked
I
at
remember
it.
seeing the basketball. Were they attached?
Can we,
They just
not
updated
can we, I
They're
would
not
like
as-
to lobby.
Yes.
Update it on their website.
I'll
I'd
try to
like
put
to
'em on
lobby
here for
Utah
you.
School Activity
That would be
Association and ask for permission not to wear, you know, for the mask mandates out in the fresh air and.
So,
So my question is are we gonna have some liability with allowing visitors and volunteers in? Do we need a waiver on any of that? Are we good with that?
No, that was really recommendation from the state reentry plan.
Oh, that was?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
and I think as long as whatever is in place by the health order, I mean, we can't say, if they say they won't wear a mask in, yeah, then our answer's gonna be you can't come in until the
I
state
think they would
says you
have to
can't. Don't
comply
have
with
it
our
on.
guidelines, but
But I
I
think
could
we
still be there.
following those guidelines, we're gonna be fine.
All right.
So,
Thing.
my thought is, a year ago, when things were shut down for 2 weeks, I'm going to venture to say everybody really thought it was gonna be 2 weeks.
Mhm.
I did. When we went to an additional month, 2 weeks into that is when it occurred to me and I told my husband, this is not gonna end in 2 more weeks and it's not gonna end anytime soon because the people who've made these decisions will still be the same people making all the decisions. We're in this for a long haul. But I didn't anticipate it to be next March, you know, a year from now, we're still going to be, you know, we're gonna have a lot of restrictions in our lives and lives as we have known it has changed. So going forward, I would like to spend some time and have some plans of what we can possibly do on a local level in order to comply and make a difference and maybe give some suggestions. One of the things, if this is gonna continue into the fall, I would like to write, and we'd have to start thinking forward, so let's plan on that it is going to continue, because look what's happened. So can we have can we have teachers who say, I would be in a classroom with no masks, I would like to be in a classroom with no mask. Other teachers might say, I don't wanna come to school and work unless I'm in a mask and all my students are in a mask. Can we look at those types of things, or I'm requesting that we do look at those types of things and have mask classrooms and non-mask classrooms? Because what I really want in the end is for parents to be able to have choices in their children's education. Of course, with it, you know, everybody doesn't get what they want. I mean, you know, that's not an option in life. We don't all get everything we want, but I think it might be a really good idea to start looking at options if government outside of us still imposes rules that are troubling to a lot of people, that we may want to look at that. Mask classrooms, non-mask classrooms, give people their options, and I know there's a lot of people who feel really strongly they want their kids in masks and they want to go to work and be in masks and be around people, and other people have the opposite. So I think that's something that we probably should start looking at and see what the options are. And also, if that's how generally our community feels, we've been real successful at having 2 different things happen within our district. Schools that are completely virtual and schools that are in class. And that's the beauty of local school boards, that's the local of community schools, parental involvement. I've said for a long time, I appreciate parental involvement, whether I agree with the parents or not. I'm so appreciative of parents who care about their children's education and actually partner with us in education instead of just, we see students that nobody cares, their parents don't seem to care about their education. That you know, that's not a large number, but we have those students. And so I always appreciate a parent who really gets involved, not only on an issue like this, but their day-to-day efforts with their students. Their students come to school prepared, they are truly involved in their education, and that we have an opportunity to work with parents and the general community to provide the type of education that they're actually paying for. So I would like to start looking at those kinds of things and maybe reaching out to other school districts too and the state and saying, these are the types of things we want to look at. This is what we're interested in. we're taking all of this from the top down, but how much is coming from the communities towards the state to say, this is what our communities want?
Well, I think this picture is gonna look very different come August, and it's always a work in progress. I mean, you've seen from when we started with the first part of our reentry plan till now, and it's a living, I mean, we're dealing with
It's
this
moved
every.
one direction, but it could all of a sudden go, I mean,
But
we
on the
just
other
don't
hand,
know.
you look at where we're at too with what we're able to do this spring, which I think's pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
we're heading in some positive directions, and yes,
We
we
are.
can have that dialogue. I believe so. but
Really,
it's-
that dialogue all played out at the legislative session this
Yeah.
year. There were a number of bills that very
Yeah.
much wrestled with
I
that.
agree.
What level does the local have input? What level is it gonna come down from the top? And as far as I know, none of the bills that really would have drastically flipped the power or the chain of command were passed, but maybe I'm wrong. But I think there's still, I do know, like with the April 10th mandate to lift the mask, there are some major steps being taken to try to move back to a more normal type of life, so.
Okay.
But yes, we could look at those.
Let's look at some of those options, that we can have some choices, because we've already done it in our district where we've accommodated communities the way they want it. And I think that's the beauty of local education, is that we have virtual in our Southern, and we have in class here, and that seems to fit the communities well.
Okay.
I think that's success.
I pulled out that House Bill 294, which gave the
Thanks,
April
Julie.
10th end date for the masks. And it did talk about K-12, that they weren't removing that, but in the next paragraph it says no later than July 1st.
Yep.
So I think there is a.
There is an end
where
there.
There is an end for K-12 masks.
All right.
It doesn't mean that won't change again, because
Everything
they've had an
changes.
end date before, like we're gonna shut everything down for 2 weeks. Okay, we're gonna shut everything down 2 weeks and it'll open up. Before we got there, we're gonna shut things down for another month, another 4 weeks. Before we got to the end of that 4 weeks.
But I think this
We're going
bill
to-
also takes some of the power away from the governor's advisory committee and puts it to the legislative committee. And, which makes it more difficult for it just to change over and over again. So we'll see how it plays out.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are to number 2, Evan Bolt with Monticello City, and Rob Adams is on the phone, so we'll let you take the floor.
All right.
Evan's gonna go first, and then when we get done with him, we'll pull up Rob's presentation and he'll walk us through slide by slide. The first slide is not numbered, and then after that, they're all numbered.
Okay,
All right. Well, thank you for allowing us to present tonight or this afternoon. And I'll just go ahead and start. For those that don't know me, my name's Evan Bolt. I'm the newer city manager for Monticello. Started in July 20th, so I'm finally familiar enough with everything that's been going on to really start moving on some projects and see what we can do to help the city and the broader community. So if none of you have been to the swimming pool in Monticello, it was constructed in 2010. It was built as a seasonal indoor pool. It's open from about May to August, and whenever they were constructing it, they didn't provide the proper insulation in the locker rooms and the bathrooms to actually be able to have it run year-round. But we still run utilities year-round. Water remains in the pool. We have to keep it from freezing, and we still have to chlorinate. And so, as you can kind of look at the graph, utilities make up a large portion of our budget every year for the pool. It's about $25,000 a year, about 36% on average over the past 10 years. The reason why it's kind of downward sloping is it was built in 2010, first season open was 2011, so the cost of maintenance is pretty much zero in 2011. So as those costs rise, utilities usually make up less of a percentage, but they're still a very large portion of that budget every year. And 12 months of the year, utilities are running, but only about 4 months of the year, the pool's open. So the end goal of all this is, can we have a fully operational pool all year? And really the biggest concern with the city is on a conservative, max kind of viewpoint. It's about $85,000 a year to keep that heated during the winter, to allow anybody to really swim there, and a less costly is about $70,000. And so if we look at the next slide, so really what it comes down to is a solar kind of field, solar panel installation for the pool is kind of the best option. S-Power, AES, the parent company, paid for a structural analysis to see if we could put it on the roof. Didn't have the structural integrity to do so. We looked at all of the city property surrounding that to see if we could do that. Didn't get enough sunlight. So we're coming here, and it may seem like we're asking for, possibly an agreement for some land, but it's a lot more than that for just the city, the residents, and also hopefully the school district and the board. So solar, if it's operated year-round, would offset about 80 to 90% of that $70,000 to $85,000 per year. Those savings would then go towards about $30,000 in insulation and $20,000 towards a new HVAC system over the course of a couple years. Residents would have access to that pool year-round. There's really not a whole lot of winter activities unless you come down here to a gym. For Monticello residents and people from Blanding all over the county can come to Monticello to swim as well during the winter. And it also provides potential full-time jobs for county residents in the area. And so we're asking for an agreement from the school board because the only really logical place to put these solar panels is on a section of school board property. And Rob will detail that in his presentation. There's a picture of that. But really what it comes down to is one of the benefits for the school district is you could have physical education classes, swimming classes for your students during the winter. But more importantly, curriculum opportunities, technical vocational programs. And so on the next slide, in the community I was previously in, Paonia, Colorado, under Delta County School District, they partnered with Solar Energy International. And so their high school students took up this technical vocational training and really just they took off with it. And so it started there. They started putting solar energy cost savings towards the school district, installing them on school district buildings, helping the school district, helping the students learn, really, really just important skills and possibly skills that could translate into a career later on. But it went from the high school all the way down to the elementary school. The high school students for projects would have little kind of solar mechanisms that they'd help the elementary school kids put together. And it just ended up turning out to be something really neat and something that the community was very proud of and the whole county as a whole. So as Rob presents, I just kind of want to present the school board with a question is, would the school board allow or consider the use of this land for the city to install solar panel installation or system through some kind of agreement? And so that would most likely be through our city attorney and Matthew, but just if we could get that ball rolling or anything like that, or have those conversations, we'd really appreciate it. And so that's enough for me. I'll go to Rob, and then hopefully we'll have time afterwards for some questions.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I assume that the first title slide's on. Just go ahead and move to the next one. First of all, let me say that I know some of you, I don't know all of you. I'm a 1972 graduate of Monticello High School. That dates me, but I can't do anything about it. As Evan said, when we built the wind farm there north of Monticello, we discussed what projects we could work on to help the community, and this was one that came up. And it's been a year or two, and now we're just getting around to it. But I want to make it clear that this facility will belong to the city. It won't belong to us. We're just helping out with it. And like he also said, we did a structural analysis on the roof, found out that that was not structure to hold what we need to, and it's not so much the weight of the panels, so much as it impedes the snow from falling off of it, and so it stays up there longer and builds up, and that presents too much of a risk. But as we looked at it, we would need about a quarter of an acre. That would be the westernmost 100 feet of that lot that the school district acquired from Ben and Red's estate, which would leave almost 400 feet on the eastern side to do what's necessary there. Also want to say that one thing we're concerned about is the safety of these facilities. There's really not a lot of moving parts. In fact, the only moving parts generally are fans and the inverters, but we're required to put a 6-foot high chain link fence around them and have authorized entrance only. The next slide, which would be numbered slide 3, shows basically what the system would look like. As we looked at the utility bills, we felt like a 60 kilowatt system would adequately produce enough to go a long way towards offsetting the expense of the electricity used throughout the year. So, 60 kilowatts in Monticello would produce about 115,000 kilowatt hours per year. Just to give you an idea of what a solar system consists of, there's a racking system that you can see in that picture to which the panels are mounted. There would be somewhere between 100 and 180 panels. What we've seen over the past several years is the panels don't really change size. There are two basic sizes of panels that we use, a 60 cell panel and a 72 cell panel. So depending on which size is chosen, it may take more or less. And then the other thing that happens every year is they get more efficient. When I first started in this business about 10 years ago, a 72 cell panel would output about 275 watts. Nowadays they're close to 500. So they're a little bit more efficient that way. We would mount it on a fixed tilt racking system, which is what you see in the picture there. That means it faces south, it doesn't move, as opposed to a lot of the systems that we build as a company now have what we call a single axis tracker. The rows are oriented north to south, they face east in the morning, and then they gradually follow the sun throughout the day. Those are a lot more complicated, and so we feel that for purposes of this system, a fixed tilt is best. Another thing about a solar system is that solar panels generate electricity in direct current, so that means that we have to run that current through an inverter to change it to alternating current before it enters the building. And that's a picture of a typical 60 kW inverter. Go to the next slide. Evan mentioned the financial aspect of the electricity there. This is what the production pattern looks like over the course of a year using weather data from Monticello. As one would expect, you have the greatest production in June. And you might ask, well, we really need this in the wintertime. And that's true. The way that works is we generally, or not generally, in a system like this, we would enter a net metering agreement with the local electricity provider, which in Monticello is Empire Electric. We've spoken to Empire Electric. They have a net metering program. A net metering program allows you to put a solar system on a public building or a residential building. I personally have one on my home in northern Utah, and my best month of the year is always going to be June because the sun's up in the sky longer. Now, what happens is during those months where your production exceeds the consumption, a net metering agreement allows the measurement of that excess production to go into an account where it can be drawn from later in those months of the year where the opposite is true and consumption is greater than production. All net metering accounts that I'm aware of zero out once a year, and that's why it's generally not cost effective to overbuild your solar system, because you'll end up giving production to the utility. So, in most cases, you try to size it no greater than 90% of your total need. That's generally financially the best way to do it. Evan has mentioned the situation over at Delta High School in Colorado. I've just got a few benefits here. As a company, we have worked with school districts across the country. We have several operations in California. We're developing them in Virginia. We have several in Arizona. When it's possible and appropriate, we have teamed up with schools. We are a member of the Discovery Education STEM program and we can make that offering to the district. But specific to this system, I can see great benefits to your CTE program. Solar system provides a great way to teach safety, basic wiring, the difference between AC and DC. You can teach a lot about the electrical code, why we have it, what its basic elements are. We also can teach a lot about solar production, how it works, the different components involved. There's a real element of physics that could possibly be taught there too, and teach particular job opportunities. Finally, there's an organization called the North American Board of Certified Electrical Practitioners. They have a solar certification program. I've personally been through it. It's very good. That's something that you could start in high school, I believe. And when you come out of there, you're ready to get a job installing solar systems. That is, finally, as Evan mentioned, doing this would give year-round access to the pool, which could be used by the high school. In any case, that's all I have, and I'd open it up to any questions anybody has of me or Evan. I'm going to offer Evan to answer questions.
Rob, I have a question. This is Superintendent Nielsen. Your location right there is adjacent to the baseball field, and I do know that there's some balls that are hit over that fence and thrown over that fence. Does that potentially damage this fairly significantly if they're hit by baseballs?
It could. We have systems next to golf courses. I don't know that I've ever heard of a golf ball cracking a panel. That's something that I don't think would be a big risk. And even if it is, the one panel, they're easy to swap out and so on. So, yeah, the other thing about panels is they come down a tremendous degree in price. When I first started in this business over 10 years ago, they were valued at somewhere between $2.50 and $3 a watt. Now they're closer to 50 cents or less. And so that is a risk, but the only times that I've witnessed a panel being damaged were back east, where we have to mow between the rows. Sometimes a rock's picked up and chucked into the panel that will break it. But I'm not overly worried about that. When when you look at the distance between them, I think that's gonna be, I know it's a risk, but I don't think it's a huge risk.
Thank you.
And that's something, if there were to be an agreement, that the city would provide insurance coverage on. So if there were any damages, the school board wouldn't incur any of those costs.
Steve, do you have questions?
So what are you proposing as far as compensation is concerned? Are you just thinking that the benefits to the school district, the education, and the potential use of the pool? Are you thinking that would be consideration for using the land, or
Yeah, and that can, I was hoping that'd be factored into it, but really it's, with any agreement, it's negotiation. So if the school board feels like those opportunities aren't enough, then, I mean, there's always the ability to negotiate, and that's something that the city would, work with you on, and if it were to come to that, so.
Question?
Okay, yeah, so we've had and keep re-signing an agreement with Blanding City. And we've talked about in past years that we should do the same thing with Monticello, because in both cities we use the facilities of the other entity. And the thing that we've talked about is the taxpayers have paid for, the city facilities, and they paid for the school district facilities. Same people are paying for everything. So it's silly to have a fee that would charge for the other entity to use the other entities, because it's better just to have an agreement and not be charging the entities when tax dollars went into paying for both of them anyway. So we've had that agreement with Blanding City for a long time, and that gets signed, it expires, and we re-sign that. So we need to look at doing one with Monticello where we are using we're essentially doing the same thing in Monticello, but there's nothing formal that has ever been formalized there. So that's something we should be doing anyway. And then having the opportunity to use those facilities. Probably in Monticello, city probably uses our facilities much more than the school district uses city, maybe not. Maybe there's, city ball fields, so I know we use those as well, the school district. So what we could do, and what you, is do a lease for 50 years or something like that on the solar panels. Another thing, the CTE stuff and all the science, I don't understand that as much as I'd really like to, and how our students can benefit because solar panels are actually installed. I don't understand that completely, but I'd like to know more about how that benefits the learning of that and how we use that in our CTE and I'm not quite sure. Just because they're there, we have the opportunity, but if they're not there, we don't have those CTE opportunities. But one thing that I know is a struggle for any swimming pool in a rural area is having trained lifeguards. I trained lifeguards for over 20 years for the Red Cross, and that is a constant dilemma. If that pool is open year round, it could be less of a dilemma, but people who want to be lifeguards are usually the kids in school. I got my first certifications when I went to college. I was certified by the Red Cross, although I had worked and taught swimming lessons for years before that while I was in high school. They teach those in colleges, and I'm guessing we could do that in our CTE courses too. Kit or Gina Grover was here, but I don't know, I know they have cosmetology courses outside of high school, but we do those right in high schools as well in the state of Utah. So possibly that could be a CTE course that maybe everybody in our county could participate in through distance ed, that the San Juan kids and our southern schools could participate in training lifeguards as part of a school class in our high schools. I would like to see
We'll have,
that done as well. So
I think once we decide what's gonna happen with that's an action item, then those details can be worked out.
Yeah.
and you would meet with Matt. So, Lucille, do you have any comments, or Nelson?
Was that a question of me?
No.
I can only hear about every other word.
Yeah, Lucille or Nelson, did you have any questions? Okay, do you have anything to wrap it up?
I would just add, just to wrap it up, so the board is aware, we looked at the master plan of that land, and you know the CT came and had some strategic plans. These two plans do not compete. The land that the CT had laid out falls short of the boundary of the land here that they are proposing. So just be aware that there's not a conflict of interest over the land right there, from what our CT has presented to you.
And then I want to follow up with, I made some comments, but a question. So to be able to have the facility so that it's heated, have you looked into, do you know the history of how difficult it is to have employees work in the facility?
In
Have
terms of
you-
year round?
Mhm.
Yeah, so we put out kind of some feelers to the community, and asked, if someone were to get licensed or if someone had interest in becoming a lifeguard, how many people, could commit to a year. And there were a couple individuals that, Shane Christensen, our rec director, said, I know a couple people right off the top of my head. And if we're thinking about, if school continues, at least for colleges, to be more online, and I'm hoping it won't be for too long, then there might be, or until things return back to, the way they were before, where they're allowing kids back onto college campuses full time, however long that may take, 2 to 3 years, maybe a year, who knows, they would need some employment, and most likely they'd probably stay at their parents' house during that time. And so we're confident that there's a skilled enough labor force in this area to be able to staff that pool year round. And that's dating back to research done by the previous rec director back from 2016 to 2018. So there's always people willing to work, and I think that's would probably be the least of our issues. The most concerning in a time frame is getting that HVAC system installed as well as insulation, so we're actually realizing the full benefit of the solar system rather than just not having it open year round and then having that net meter account reset even though it's not open year round because we haven't gotten to those capital improvements yet.
So, well, one of the things, if we lease this property, then, and the city, and I know that's not our issue, if Monticello City installs these solar panels and then it ends up that it's not used during the winter anyway, and the property is tied up with solar panels, I can tell you that Blanding's weather is nice enough generally to keep the Blanding pool open into later in September, and this last year probably would have been nice in October, but there is not the workforce. Those lifeguards, they say, I'm done, and they walk away, and Blanding has closed the pool early. They really, really struggle to keep it open till Labor Day, and just barely limp by, and can't keep it open after that because people will not work.
Yeah, and
So,
any potential agreement, there would be, of course, requirements that would need to be met within a certain time. If you can't keep the pool open due to staffing during the winter, then of course that's going against an agreement. So as long as we detail, you complete insulation and HVAC in this amount of time, and then you keep it fully staffed during this amount of time, as long as those conditions are met, we'll strive towards those, but there's language that you can put in any kind of agreement from a school district perspective to kind of protect that and make sure that, the city's just not, taking pretty much
Sure.
energy and getting a free ride.
All right, thank you, Evan, thank you, Rob. We do that as an action item,
Okay,
and then we'll let you know, but thank you for coming.
okay, yeah, thanks for having us.
Appreciate
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
All right,
thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Rob.
so we have about 5 minutes before presentation, so Matt, let's jump down to one of our school district policies, number So number 6.
Okay, if possible, I'd just like to talk about them all at the same
Okay.
time really quickly.
That's
So
fine.
this is continuing in our effort to get some housekeeping done in the area of policy. We have here, in both cases with the policies relating to the superintendent and the business administrator, situations where our policy conflicts with our own internal contracts, which causes ambiguity and can expose the district to some liability. So this is basically just saying, my recommendation is we are going to get rid of policy that is not needed and just have that be governed by the contract, whatever the terms of the contract you reach with the superintendent and the business administrator. And so there's 2 policies that I'm recommending be repealed in their entirety, and then the other 2 each have a clause that was in conflict with the existing contracts that we've had in place. And that's my recommendation on those 4 policies.
Okay.
Questions?
No, do you want to do policy 4131?
Sure.
Do you have enough time? for
Policy
that?
4131 is also just some housekeeping. In that, there is language in that policy that we have not been able to comply with since the Affordable Care Act went into place. So it's a situation where our policy is not necessarily in line with that legislation, and therefore creates controversy. And just to be on the safe side and make sure there's no ambiguity or misunderstanding, I'd like to have that language deleted and let the legislation that is appropriate govern how that works.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Since we have the Olsen couple available, we're going to start. So, Jenna, do you mind coming to the front, please? And because you're socially distanced, it's
Do you
your
want me to sit in
choice.
this chair?
Yeah, it's
We
your
wanna
choice.
make sure that Nelson and Lucille can hear you, so you might actually pull it
Yeah.
up just a little.
I do have quite a loud voice.
You're
Use your
welcome
teacher voice.
to,
Yes, I will.
take your mask on or off, so
Okay.
it's easier to talk with that on. So usually, our format that we've set is to ask you questions. Are you comfortable with that?
I am comfortable with that.
All right, so we're gonna start. Mary, would you like to start that?
No, let me,
We gotta get our
let
notes.
somebody else go
That's
first.
okay. We popped in.
You go, you're Monticello.
Okay, I'm on a cell. Wow.
I have one if you want me to
Okay.
break the ice and get
You
going.
go right ahead.
I
You
usually
ready
go
for me,
first.
Jane?
I am ready.
I know, I scare you, right? I haven't scared anybody.
No, you haven't scared me yet.
Okay, so you mentioned I was a little bit curious about your challenges, or I think it was under your challenges where you
Okay.
said your staff would prefer to return to a longer day. I think you put it as one of your challenges.
Yeah.
Speak to that to just a little bit.
So, a couple of weeks ago, I just kind of did some interviews with the teachers, just kind of fill out how they were feeling about some of the restrictions that we've had in place. And so I just did one-on-one interviews, popping in, chatting with the teachers, and most of them are concerned about getting the content that they were teaching in a normal day last year, being able to have enough time or sufficient time to be able to continue to teach. They're finding a struggle to fit everything into our shortened day. So that's just where that comes from, is that it's really hard for teachers to get everything that they have been asked to do in elementary school, well, I guess in all schools, in the amount of time that we've shortened.
So if we move back towards what we call closer to the normal we had
Mhm.
pre-COVID, and we went back to our original schedule, your staff would find that as favorable.
I would
Your
assume that a
thoughts?
majority of the teachers in our school would advocate for a longer day. For the day that we had before. Not longer than we've had, but what we had in the past, yes.
Sure. All right, so another challenge is
Yep.
volunteers and visitors in the building are missed.
Yep.
So if you heard our discussion prior, we talked about allowing visitors and volunteers back in.
Yep.
Previously though, some of your teachers had expressed great concern about allowing that to happen. Are they feeling that they are needed, want them back in?
So at the beginning of the year, we were concerned about the contact tracing that was going to have to happen if we brought visitors or volunteers back into the building, and what extents we'd have to go to track who was coming in and out of our building. But through our course of this year, we've kind of found ways to track people, how to kind of limit their interaction with people, making sure that people are social distancing, what we're comfortable with letting people participate in. And so I think still having a school kind of system in place would be something that we would promote, but we would want parents and visitors and volunteers to be allowed to come back into the building, but we wouldn't just let them come back in however they were. There would be some kind of rules and regulations we'd have in place, hopefully, to make
Okay.
that run smoothly.
Question.
Go ahead, Lucille.
Okay, attendance is at an all-time low, so how are you working on that to bring it back up?
That is a really good question. We're just trying to be persistent with contacting families who are keeping their kids at home, but we're also trying to be sensitive because we're asking people to stay home if they're sick. So it's kind of this line that we have to balance, letting the families know that the best place for their kids is in the school participating in class, but still being flexible. If they do see symptoms of COVID-19, we're asking them to stay home still. So we have to just kind of show them that we care and check on them, but still be flexible with families if they are concerned about something. So that's just something we're checking on, but it's lower than it has been in the past.
Questions?
I
Okay,
had,
thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lucille.
I had the perfect question and superintendent beat me to it. If,
I'm sorry.
You don't have another one?
if- well, so are you fine, well, just thinking back, the reason why we did that is to set time aside to help the students who were not coming to school for,
Yep.
for whatever reason. So you're finding that we don't really need that in your school now?
So I'm sure that my school is different than much other schools. We really have very limited students who are participating in, and so the teachers they're using their time to the best of their ability. They're communicating with the parents, but they would rather have the kids for an extended amount of time. They would rather have the kids with
Yeah,
us.
when we originally set that, it was for option 2 students, like you pointed out. And then when we removed option 2, there was still some question of how often would students be quarantined and still be at home, and
Yep.
knowing that attendance was, so there was still a feeling that maybe we need more time still students, even though we just eliminated option 2. But now I think we're settling in, and now might be a time to look at that, and that's why I saw that very interesting in that report.
Well, and when the teachers are utilizing Canvas in their everyday classroom, and so when students go on quarantine, they're just picking it up at home. So we're dropping, it's already in place, the teachers already have it going, so when they find out that they have to quarantine, the only question really is, how do we get you a Chromebook? We don't have that much concern about anything else, and so it's just kind of been fluid, and the teachers would like more time with the kids, or the same amount of time with the kids as they have had in the past.
Thanks for elaborating on that.
Yeah.
Let's see. A couple of those, I got sidetracked on some of theirs, but when you talk about the agendas for making the data-driven decisions
Yes.
on those, can you elaborate that a little bit on the formative assessments?
Yeah, so we're, a lot of schools throughout the district are working with A2A, and they train our schools very well about how to use an agenda and how to run a really highly effective meeting. And so we have been using an agenda in our school for quite a few years, but through A2A we've been able to have more, they've trained us to have more effective meetings, timely meetings, and we've kind of taken a step further to kind of look at common formative assessments. So the grade levels will sit down and they'll decide about what their learning intentions are going to be and how they're going to monitor those with those common formative assessments. I know that some of them even communicate between schools. I know Blanding and Monticello Elementary, sometimes the second grade will have even same assessments.
Okay, and is this the PLCs that you're referring to specifically?
Our grade
Okay.
levels, so we meet as PLCs as grade levels, so our teams
Mhm.
would be,
Okay.
like the
And
second grade
sharing
team.
that information with Fleming Elementary, I mean, some.
yeah,
some
second grade, I know for sure that they have been
does
sharing.
happen.
Mhm.
So do you have a lot of differentiated instruction within your classroom with students? Because of the PLCs, are they facilitating that, or?
Yeah, I would say that they do PLC. So we have a computer time where they get to participate in some online instruction that gives everybody kind of the instruction they need right where they're at, instead of just giving them second grade instruction if they were to be more advanced or if they were to be just working a little bit lower than their grade level. And we speak about that. I know that they use that data to help kind of drive differentiated instruction in the classrooms, kind of see where they're at and to separate them into groups. They also use Dibble's data, lots of different data to kind of show those different groups and to have some differentiated instruction.
Okay, and then just one more to follow up. So understanding teacher clarity.
Yes.
For me to clarify.
To be
that-
clear about
is
teacher
that-
clarity.
Is
yeah.
teacher clarity, is the definition of that students, or ideally that every student would completely understand what the teacher was wanting them to learn? And I know that, giving instruction is one thing, and students learning it is the other, or the actual goal. And
Yes,
so is that where teacher clarity is, when we talk about teacher clarity, is that what that means always, that the students have a clear understanding?
Of where the
Is that
teacher,
what that's all about?
yeah, where the teacher
Okay.
would like them to be by the end. So the teacher clarity is broke up into a lot of different things, but something we're focusing on at our school is having learning intentions. And so that's what the students should know or be able to do, well, what they should know by the end of the lesson. And then we have success criteria that we're focusing on. That's the skill or the task that they should be able to do by the end of the lesson. So yeah, it is. It's just what it is. To me, it is just what it is. That the teacher is clear in their instruction. Yeah.
Okay. And you feel like do you have a lot of work to do in that area, or is it just always, is it always a little bit of a work in progress, and are you mostly there, or is it all over the place?
That's hard for me to say and to say about all the teachers, because I'm a person who I'm always wanting to perfect my task. I you know what I mean? I never get to that point, but where I'm completely finished or I feel like I'm completely perfect. But I think that the teachers have shown some amazing progress in this area, and I don't know if it is something that will ever be absolutely perfected or if it will be something that will be changing to fit with our students as we go through. I would say probably the latter.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you. We
Thanks.
appreciate you coming. And
You get a Olsen break, I think, too.
oh,
Split them up.
well, let's see. I do have Ryan listed next, but I can have these.
I'll go next.
All right.
He's ready.
Okay, come on up.
Hey guys, how we doing?
Good. How are you?
Awesome, thank you.
Did you govern the dance competition well?
Pardon me?
last month? Did you govern the dance competition well last month?
Oh yeah, I'm like an expert in drill, that's for sure. I'm always a learner.
Right. So,
Oh, let me just, I'm not on this one either. Let me find my notes.
I'm sorry.
Oh, lots of them,
I
huh,
didn't
Mary?
bring my notes, this is my
Okay,
problem.
Steve's gonna start us out.
Hello Steve, how are you?
Good.
Good, awesome, thank you.
Just looking at your goals, increase ELL, SPED proficiency. A couple of other goals, one of your goals is teacher clarity. Can you elaborate a little bit more on your goals? To what extent do you want to increase, or what you want to do regarding teacher clarity? How do you know when you get there, and so forth?
It's a great question. It's, Jenna talked a little bit about it. Some of the things that we're doing new this year is teacher peer observations. So I'm just going to start there with teacher clarity. Is obviously what are our learning intentions for that day? What standard are we going to take? What activity, and when do we know we have that certain standard? So the teacher clarity portion is how teachers present. We're in the first year of A2A program, and this is just barely introduced to us. And in February, in fact, we had every teacher in our building do peer observations on learning intentions or teacher clarity, same type of thing. And I had nothing but positive reviews from our teachers. It's something that's never been done at San Juan High School, where we went in classrooms. So at first they were very nervous about it, but once the teachers got in there, they absolutely loved, and we got a lot of great feedback from it. Now where we take it from there is we continue to make sure our learning intentions are clear for students, that they know what's expected every day when they walk into that classroom, that I'm going to go get it done. And I know what the teacher expects. It's out clear. Is it perfect? Is it always a learning process? Of course. As teachers, and as administrators, we're all learners. And we learn from this by each other and collaborating with it. That's the big thing with our teacher clarity. Take it one step at a time with peer observations and give positive feedback. Some grows and glows with those types of things. Grows, what can we grow on? And what did I see great? And a lot of these teachers have taken those things to their own classrooms, what they've seen from other teachers. It's fun. It's fun to build that collaboration within our school, and it builds a great climate for our school as well.
Right. Mary, do you want to go?
Yeah, so talk about the Common Learning Challenge, the ELA writing.
Okay, so yeah, definitely. What we wanted to do, some, again, collaboration, cross-curriculum, it kind of goes in tact with that. We wanted to include all our language arts, math, and science, and teach critical thinking. So we did some cross-curriculum type of thing where each area will do cross-curriculum, and it's in critical thinking. And that data will come out at the end of this quarter with some of our end of quarter testing and stuff. Then we'll collaborate together, see what we learned if we increased in our critical thinking in math, science, and language arts.
Okay, so one other question then. I know students just took the ACT.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm unfamiliar with what San Juan High School's been doing in preparation for the ACT this past year. So did we talk about?
Yeah, we definitely do bell ringers. We have an ACT prep class that we require kids have taken for the last couple of years. That Mrs. Sarah Workman teaches that.
Okay, so that's still, and so does every student?
Sophomore year, and then we teach teachers to do some type of bell ringer, attention getter, and it's usually ACT prep questions that we'll use with that in line with the ACT test.
Okay, do you have feedback from students on feeling like, I mean, do you know anything, how they feel? Do they feel like that's helpful if they taken the ACT and saying, oh, I wasn't prepared at all, or the things that we've been doing, can they see that correlation that it's been helping? And do we have that feedback?
And not yet, because we just took it and it's my first year, but that's some data that I absolutely want to know, because we are looking at maybe transitioning not so much ACT prep class, not offered as much because it's kind of a filler sometimes, and just part of our some changes that we're going to make at San Juan, and maybe add some more character ed along with the ACT prep, but that's a whole nother issue. But I would definitely want to talk to some of these students after they've taken the test to see, hey, how prepared do you feel? And we'll only see it with our test scores. I mean, that's where we're going to see if it worked or not, or it's had worked.
Well,
we had a little bit of a
feeling, because with these bell ringers, if they say, yeah, some of those bell ringers, I saw that correlation to the test. Now, because, I mean, the way I'm looking at this is the actual scores may or may not have been directly related to some of those things. I'm always interested in what did students, how did they feel about it? Is that what helped them, or did something else help them if they had higher scores?
Yeah.
What did they think? I saw one student after, I said, how did it go? And her comment was, and I quote, it sucked.
Oh, yeah, and that's probably usually if you were to ask every kid.
I said, I'm sorry.
No, we were out there in the hall and you could just see it in their eyes. I mean, it's a difficult test.
And some kids say, I don't love tests, but I felt like I did good, and different things. So. But
that's some things we need to definitely look at.
I'd like to know if they feel like the things that they specifically did, how did they feel about it?
And see if they were prepared for it from the bell ringers in the ACT prep class.
Yeah.
That is some great questions that we need to find out for sure. That we will. Thank you. That's good. Any data we can do will help us better, right?
I'm sorry, Nicole, I've got to do this presentation. If you could hold it till public comment, that would be great. So, one of the things is option 3. Of course, that's, I mean, it's just our situation, our circumstance.
Absolutely.
What is happening to reach these? I mean, I know everyone's reaching out, but do you feel it's
What do we do
hopeful?
specifically? We've hired a para educator that will make contact with them every week and let the parents know where they're at. And it's come down to where sometimes we've done some learning plans with them where we've actually got them to come to school and say, hey, we're here, you need to be here by the time the quarter ends here. But with that para, they know exactly who to go to and when they have questions. And he's done a great job with that. It's Carter Holiday, in conjunction with Mrs. Rogers and myself, and anybody that can help, and even our lead teachers, whether it's Josh Kais at Monticello or Pat Pace and Kenya Nielsen. You know, we just have a team collective effort to make sure that we're trying to do whatever we can to motivate. We know that we're going to take some work this summer,
Yeah.
but it's constantly checking up on them, and Carter does that for us every week.
That's great.
Yeah.
Did you have anything?
Well, I think I was on the same page with Steve again. I think your goals, I like your goals. I was looking for the same thing, like when you say increase ELL SPED proficiency, how will you know when you did that? That was my question, and it tied right in with President Black's question.
Well, we just completed WIDA testing. I think that's going to be some important data, and we've done things differently this year with our admin team and along with our para that's involved in ELL, where we do check-ins with our ELL students at least twice a quarter. We did some incentives for WIDA testing to take it serious, that this is important data for our school to see where we're at. Because last year I was embarrassed with the results. So it's been a huge emphasis for us. We were minus 35%, gain. We're hoping the things that we've done and implemented this year that we'll see a huge improvement. And I think we will, because we've done. WIDA comes out. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure when you get it, but that's probably where you want to make it a SMART goal and say we did this on WIDA last year. We believe we're going to reach this on WIDA this year.
That's yeah.
Nelson, do you or Lucille have any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Mine's a challenge question, number 1. Monticello High School has 7 seniors at risk of not graduating into option 3, I'm assuming. So how many seniors do you have in the other option, and how are they looking?
Okay, if you go back, I think it's in our. I think it's there, right? Yeah, that one before, next one, the green and the, yeah. And Mrs. Rogers I brought her because she's my data person for this. But right now, if our option 3s, you look at right here, this is obviously second quarter data. We're going to put this together again at the end of this quarter. But I think it's just a very few handful. Jenna, do you know the? Yeah.
86%.
Four kids. We have 4 kids.
We have 4 on track that are option 1, but our
Will you come up here so you can hear on the phone?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So not shown on this report. Seniors are tracked on a completely different form that we do, and we have option 3 seniors, brought them in, and we believe that we have had to drop 2 due to 10-day drops with letters, and when they received the letters, they said, we're not even part of that school anymore. And those are our option 2 seniors that we're gonna lose. All other option 3 seniors, we have plans in place. And the really cool thing about Edgenuity, I don't know if you've looked into it at all, but you can go into the program and you can do how much has been completed and what the grade is. And then you can go in and break it down to how many days I have left and how many minutes I have to perform per day to reach my goal. And so for our option 3 seniors, we've broken this out for each one of them, and they actually have a tracking sheet that is helping them so they visually see where they're at. So that we have lost, and I don't know that we'll get back, 2.
Did you hear that, Nelson?
So 2, if you
Yes, I did.
Okay.
All right. And we have such a great team between our counselors and our admin that we just constantly track these kids, and graduation rates are a little bit scary this year with the pandemic. I mean,
Sure.
it's a fear of ours, but we've done a lot of meetings, learning plans for these seniors and freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. It's just a rolling thing that we deal with every day.
Tough, yeah, it's not easy, so, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you both coming.
Nothing else? I appreciate
You can stay all day if you want.
Well, no, we appreciate you guys for letting us be in school. It makes a difference, and the work that you made here for us. So.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, hey.
Sorry, Lucille.
I just want to congratulate your boys and girls basketball team for
Oh,
making
that's
it
right.
to state through the pandemic.
It was.
Thanks, Lucille.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun, and we had a great run, and we've had a great winter. Besides it all, we really drill team, basketball, wrestling had more wrestlers, and the boys basketball. It's been fun, and that's what's fun about high school is these extracurricular things too. So.
And then you gotta participate this year.
Yeah, and we got to play. It's
We
awesome.
got seasons.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Lucille. Okay, you get the hot seat.
No questions? Well, thank you.
So I can leave this one on your, you talked about positive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a big thing at MHS. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so this year, the assistant principal positive behavior intervention team they looked at the system that we had in place, and they decided that it was time to revamp it. We had little tokens before they were getting. So now they have, and I was going to bring some, and I apologize, I forgot, but they're little business cards, and are things of responsibility, integrity, and respect. So it has like the word respect on it and a little definition of what respect is, and when the kids do something that's respectful, they'll get the respect one, or the integrity one, responsibility one. And then they can turn in their business card for a Pop-Tart or a little treat, or if they get 3, then once a month we'll do a little drawing for bigger prizes. When I say bigger, it's like a water bottle or, $15 range. It's not a huge. At the end of the year, we've got a hoverboard, and everyone that is in for a drawing will go out for that bigger prize. So, so far it's been really, really good. Every week the teachers get 10 cards, and they're encouraged to give out 10 by next week, and they've been, for the most part, doing it, and I think the kids are enjoying it, and it's been good.
So you revamped it. Did you feel it's not working prior? And do you feel this one is working much better?
I think the other one worked just fine. I think that when we're dealing with reward systems, it almost seems like they need a rotation every few years. So we're going to keep the tokens, and maybe here in a couple of years we'll roll back and we'll do that one again. Almost like kind of keep it fresh and new and
keep them guessing.
yep. So I suspect we'll probably go back to the tokens and the earning the Buckaroo Cup, but we'll give it a couple of years.
Let me ask Lucille or Nelson, do you have a question?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Nelson.
I might have 2 or 3 maybe.
Okay,
The
go
first
ahead.
one, if you go to the graph with the San Juan quarter 2, option 1 and 2 data, it seems to be confusing to me. Is that option 1 and 2? I thought 2 was eliminated.
Are you on MHS or San Juan High?
San Juan.
Okay, go to MHS. We have Mr. Olson with us right now. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll save my question then.
Okay.
Had me nervous. I was like, I don't remember putting that
Okay,
dagger
sorry.
in there.
We switched chairs. There was a little chaos, so, yes, go ahead.
Okay. So you have in here as one of your challenges, developing strong student skills is a concern at MHS. Is that, I mean, talk about those specific concerns and what you're doing to improve those concerns for.
So right now, and for a number of years with our school trust fund money, a lot of that is invested in a 7th and 8th study hall. One of the big challenges is right now our 7th graders have more failing grades than any other subject. So if we're investing a lot of money and we're not seeing it, it's obviously a challenge. So we're kind of looking at that. We had a para that first day started today, training them up. So tracking a lot of what's going on in that is collecting data. Is you have students that have stuff to work on in the class, but they're just not working on it. So that's why I kind of identified that as a student skill, like being to class on time, working, doing homework, knowing, kind of prioritizing homework and using time wisely. So that's several things in place. We've kind of broke it up into some of the issues. One of the issues is tracking our 7th graders and where they are, because they should either be in a study hall, homework, work on that, or being pulled out for one of the math or language arts teachers for an intervention, and kind of tracking how many times the student's going to the intervention, how often that's happening. So tracking is one of the issues that I think we'll have a new system in place there as soon as we come after spring break. And then the other part is really setting expectations for the study hall. What does that look like? What are the kids doing? It's not oh, I'm done with my homework, so let's play a game, let's get out a book, let's use the time very wise. I've put it as a challenge because right now it is a challenge, but I think in 3 weeks there will be several goals that will come out of that challenge, and we'll start to make some progress to change some things. And really the one thing I'll be focusing on is the 7th graders. Quarter 1 had 10 students that failed at the end. Quarter 2 had 12 students that had an F at the end, and I would like to cut that down a lot. I don't think any kid should
Those
fail.
challenges,
So
I just have to throw this out here. It made me think of something, and I saw it on Facebook. You see a lot of things on Facebook, but I really like a lot of things I see on Facebook. And it had to do with more maybe adult things, like being physically fit is hard, and being overweight is hard. Choose your hard. I'm thinking, and marriage is hard, divorce is hard. Choose your hard. I'm thinking doing your homework is hard. Being unprepared for school and or not having the ability to get a good job someday is hard. Choose your hard. That just kind of sounds like these students are maybe not understanding. Yeah, doing homework's hard,
yeah.
but not being prepared is hard too. Choose your hard. Choose wisely is what it basically said. So I just
Exactly.
wanted to throw that out there. But I also want to thank you for I had a grandmother in Blanding call me about a grandson in Monticello, and she told me some concerns. I referred her to Mr. Olson. The next morning I just called Mr. Olson, gave him a heads up that he would have a parent and a grandmother come contact him, and his comment to me was, well, I'm just going to get in touch with this student right away and find out what those problems are. And I'm so grateful for that it didn't take, and I know they followed up by going to meet with you anyway, but it didn't take an adult to say, hey, there's some things that maybe ought to be looked into. That if a student had something, that you directly went and took care of that, and everybody's just overly thrilled about your interest in the student and talking to the parents and the way they were treated. And anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me know. I followed up with the student today, and
That's
they
still
reported
good.
that
Still good.
everything was great. So
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Okay.
Hey, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Oh,
Thank you,
yeah.
principals.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Got a soccer game to get to.
Well, okay, you better wear your coat.
Thank you.
Yeah, bet. See you guys.
Thanks. Okay, we are to our fee waiver spend plans. Thank you. So we'll turn it to the superintendent. 20 minutes.
Yes, we might can save some time here, I don't know, we'll just see where it goes, but we took your recommendations and they are listed there on a document you have attached, and I just kind of cut and paste those. And then we tried to go through those. When I say we, I will tell you right up front, Bev took the responsibility mostly for this, so for me to even use the we word is probably a huge injustice, but, then we tried to go through those and make sure the recommendations are in there where they made sense. There were a lot of things that you pointed out that just were not consistent. There were, as for the credit card fee, that had already been approved in prior meetings, that just needed to be removed. We looked at CTE, we had Jenna worked very closely. Gina worked very closely with Bev and worked through, try to provide some consistency in the area of CTE to make sure it still matched our fee schedule. I will say there are no fees on the fee sustainability schedule that changed this year. Everything on the sustainability fee schedule is the same amount that you approved last year. That could change in future years. Schools could recommend, and they would work up through a process of working through supervisors to me, and then football coaches might say, it's time we raised it. It's just, we just need, things have gone up in cost. But this year there are none, just so that you're aware that sustainability fee schedule, all fees on there are the same as last year. There is one spend plan that came in after I highlighted and alerted you to the board being live on Friday, and that's that very bottom one. FBLA San Juan High has submitted a spend plan. So there's still a little bit of realizing that they've overlooked something. They had a spend plan. They just had to revise it and change some things in it. So anyway, I don't know how much time you had to look through those, and I don't know if you still have some concerns or recommendations at this point, but we did try to get the ones that you have up until now. And it would, by law, we would like to approve these before April 1st, which this is our last scheduled opportunity to do that. And to comply with law, we need to approve these tonight. So if there's any recommendations, we can still approve them, and just note that we approve these recommendations to go into effect. And we'll make sure that we'll update them before we post them as live.
So a couple of things that Monument Valley High School Student Council, it's a clerical error. It just council spelled incorrectly.
Okay, we didn't catch that one, because I think that was on.
No, it's spelled C-U-N-C-I-L.
Okay, and that's under, which one was it?
Monument Valley High School.
Which,
Student Council, sorry. Who knows, it might be right, not on my documents that I was working this weekend. And then,
yeah, there's a mistake.
I did have that one question with San Juan High baseball, because we had put cleats and a glove as.
Cleats and gloves are
When
not.
did we decide on that? 'Cause
That's
we
not
said
part of the
no.
spend plan.
We put that on last year, and then this year we decided no.
No,
I wasn't really sure where we were at.
I don't know if they got on last year's. I think we did
Thought
not
they were
want
not
gloves and
included.
cleats and shoes. Now, we do work with coaches, and we let them know that should you be aware of an individual case, we are far better off to try to help that young person and make sure that money's not the problem. But we do not have those in our spend plans for every single. Otherwise, we would be buying a whole lot of shoes and all.
Yeah.
And those aren't specifically required by law at this point, because they still consider most kids have shoes.
Okay.
Now, again, if you remember, if our coaches designate a certain brand, a certain color, then all of a sudden they have to go on spend plan. That's what we've worked with our coaches to avoid.
Or
Yeah.
tell them they can't.
To not do it, to avoid it, exactly. Because if they do, they say we all wear blue
It's
shoes, they have to be
prohibited, right?
Nike
No,
blue
right,
to play on this
okay.
team. Now it becomes a spend plan.
So I'm just wordsmithing here, but avoid is probably not, I mean, we're
Yeah.
telling them it's prohibited, they're
Okay,
not
yeah.
allowed, right?
Yeah, we prohibit it, yes.
Okay. Did you have anything, Mary, to change on the spend plans? Other than, did you see?
Can they be, we can amend these during the year if we
Yes.
find
Yes.
something that is,
They have to go through a three-month process again, a window of having, the public has to have up to 3 opportunities to have seen these spend plans. So that's why these had to be on the board January and February and now in March to meet that requirement. So if we bring a new one to revise it, again, we gotta go back through that 3-window process.
it would be interesting to see how close they are to spending this. Do we have that information? Or, I mean, because they can spend up to this amount, but
Yeah,
not
it's
over
up to this amount, they just can't go over.
And are they,
And a lot of times they will build just a little bit of room for state or for other things, and then they don't end up going to state, well, then the cost is drastically reduced. So-
I'm not great at this.
But again,
Okay.
they
But
can't
no.
go over this amount.
Did you have any, Steve? Okay. Like I said, Nelson, Lucille, did you have anything more on spend plans?
No, I don't.
And Nelson, did you?
Are you with us, Nelson, or did we lose you? Nelson? Lost him. He'll jump back in.
Okay. All right, let's move to legislative updates then.
Yeah, I think probably both, I'll start, and then Matt can jump in or clarify as we go along, and he may have something to add at the end, but, you know, there's a lot of, bills that were passed. Here's 16 pages front and back that were passed that relate to education, so, I don't think you want a 4-hour presentation, and I'm not even prepared with every single bill to fully understand it. We're still gonna be learning, but I thought I'd give you some of the highlights and some of the things that we're watching very carefully, and go from there. The first one I would point out is Senate Bill 1 was the public ed-based budget legislation, and it did provide for a 6% WPU increase, which in past years, a 6% is considered very strong. I don't know that we've ever asked for more than 5, thinking that they wouldn't go above 5. Now, if you remember, if you're remembering how things are playing out here in the recent years, there's all of this tax revision that has played out in the last couple of years, rewriting the Utah Constitution as far as property tax and education and what will go towards it. Then there was Amendment G that we voted on. Those all tie together to purposely channel the funding of education in a different direction. And in that legislation that was passed by Amendment G, it clearly said that Utah will go a different route in funding education. And even in lean years, there'll be an opportunity it'll be taken care of a high priority. So this year was very different in that Senate Bill 1 was passed right out of the gate, and it was passed and it was done, which in all previous legislative sessions that I remember, they had a draft legislative financial package, and then it played out through the entire legislative session right up until midnight. You wasn't sure what was going to happen on the final day. That changed this year, and that's why it's changed, is because now they're trying to make sure they send a message to the public that we are fulfilling the obligation that we stated when we got voters to vote on Amendment G and pass it, and we're going to revise. Now some of the property tax money doesn't all have to go to education either. It now can go into working in a couple of different areas. And so that's all playing out right here, but again, they felt like they honored their word. They took care of education early, they passed that budget, and it was moved aside and done. Now, you know, a 6% WPU is strong and good, and we're very thankful. We're never quite sure what that means as far as a compensation package for our employees till we get other estimates of insurance, lane, steps, and other things that all factor into that. And so we'll be working through that in the next few weeks. Now there's another major change coming in, and that's this West Ed study that I think we've talked just briefly about in a prior meeting. And this new West Ed study, they were petitioned by the state school board and the legislators, I believe, had a role in it, to come in and look at education funding in the state of Utah as a whole, across the board. And they're coming out with some pretty strong recommendations, and they've put them in different categories. Every category is a little different, and now the study's kind of being pulled apart, and part of it's reflected in some areas of legislation, and some's being held back. NES funding, necessarily small school, in the Senate Bill 1 was revised. And until we see the funding estimates, I am not sure if San Juan School District came out ahead or behind on that funding. We're waiting for those estimates. But it was revised how they are generating those NES funds. They also revised, or they're looking at revising how at-risk funds are generated. And I think we brought this up in a prior meeting. The preliminary numbers on that do not favor San Juan School District. But we're being told, be patient, it's got to work through a process. No district's going to get hurt in any way substantially. So that's what we were told when Matt and I started to ask a lot of questions and look into that. So we've still got to watch and see how that'll play out. But all of these things right now in present time is playing out in the funding of Utah education. So it's very interesting to see how it's all going to settle. Also in Senate Bill 1 was allocation, and they did also pass a second supplementary, a substitute bill for this, but they did place money in there for a COVID-19 supplementary bonus. And that bonus provided financial compensation for $1,500 for licensed employees and $1,000 for non-licensed employees. Now that entire part of this bill, in my opinion, came about through a flawed process, but we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get down to item number, is it the next one? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that and what played out in this regard. But that has been approved, and we, by the legislation that passed, we should be receiving these supplementary funds by March 27th. The LEAs are supposed to receive them. So we will be prepared to pay out to those who qualify, which are school level staff members. They have to be very closely attached to a school. Licensed would receive $1,500, non-licensed $1,000. Of course, if they're only 50% or 35%, that's also prorated. But that plays out as well, and that's also included in this bill. So that's the first bill I'd bring to your attention. We'll watch carefully. Like I said, the 6% WPU, we'll try to make sense of what that's going to mean as far as our compensation package and go from there. But all in all, for public education, it was a good year. It was strong, and they tried to make sure it was. Another resolution that did not pass, but I still wanted to bring it to the board's attention. There was a resolution that was going to have all LEAs and schools work with local tribes and local tribal leaders to identify if there was anything in a name or anything that was associated with their tribe or their heritage that would be considered as non-sensitive or offensive. Now that did not pass, but I still felt like, as the superintendent, that my thought was running through my head that we've tried to be very collaborative, we've tried to be very open, and I would probably say, bill or no bill, that as I work with the tribal leaders, as we work with community members, if there is anything, we would certainly look at it and most definitely try to make changes so that we aren't having those things. I'm not aware of anything. There was, when this was in deliberation, there was talk about names. And as I thought about our district, the only possible name that I could even think that might rise to that level was White Horse Raiders. But yet, that is a name that's been adopted locally by the community, so I don't know that it would rise to that level. But I just wanted to let the board know that I think we're in a place where if there is anything of this nature, we would certainly work carefully with tribal leaders and community members to to make sure that we're not in any way have things that are offensive. There is also a bill that I'm going to look more into, that's Senate Bill 226. It's online education modifications, and it's going to provide a little different channel of how online schooling works. And so I do not have all the details on that, but I'll work through and see exactly how that's going to work out, because we have our option 3, and I want the board to know that we've got some decisions to make about option 3. We've sent out a survey to parents. I haven't seen the data yet, but we're reaching out to our option 3 parents. We're interested to know what percentage of our parents believe option 3 is where they will keep their students long-term, or their child long-term. Because we are going to have to make some decisions about how we go about meeting those needs in the future, and it will definitely impact the decisions we make, even as far as staffing and some of the things we do. So be aware that I'll probably bring back some more information on option 3, and we'll talk more explicitly, but that could tie into this bill. And then another bill of really large significance is Senate Bill 184. It suspends all letter grades, all efforts to identify any schools not achieving state set criteria, acceptable criteria. So for a year, all of those type of accountability things that were public and in place are suspended. You won't see any of our schools receive letter grades this next year. You won't see us identify any that, even if they were not meeting the state criteria, they will be given a year to. Anyway, it'll be suspended due to the pandemic and due to the fact that there's not a lot of confidence those scores, how relevant they're going to be, and we all understand it's going to be a very interesting year to look at data, knowing what our students and our families have been through in the last year, and our staff. So those are kind of the bills that I was watching very carefully. I don't know, Matt, do you want to bring any additional ones in?
Superintendent, I think you did a great job of covering them. There's just a couple that I might highlight. One of the interesting bills to me was the concealed carry firearms amendments, which basically allows individuals in the state of the proper age to conceal carry without a permit. That bill is confusing in the fact that it does not address the state code, which requires staff members to have a concealed carry permit to conceal carry. So it does not just blanket allow our employees to conceal carry. They would still need a concealed carry permit to do so in the school. So that's an education piece that we'll be working on, because we don't, ignorance is never a defense, but it's still confusing. So the other one, Senate Bill 142, if you're looking.
What was that bill? I'm sorry, the concealed.
House Bill 60.
Okay.
Senate Bill 142 does lay out more of the changes that are going in regards to the Education Appropriations Committee and putting them in the driver's seat to continue on with this West Ed study and look at how funding changes need to be or funding needs to change or be addressed in the future. If you're interested in a good read, that's delightful. The other, that was facetious, by the way. That's my big word for the day. There is a bill, a couple of bills, another bill that's interesting. We are going to be using, it's House Bill 402. We will be using data from the 2019-20 school year for the purpose of funding transportation, which is important. And I think that's all of my notes off the top of my head.
Okay. Any questions?
Good, because I don't know if I can answer.
Okay. Nice overview. So do you just want to go right into?
I can, yes.
The supplemental education.
Yes. As I said, in Senate Bill 1, the educational funding, there was money for a COVID-19 supplemental bonus for our employees that qualify. To qualify, you have to directly be working with students or in one way or the other and associated directly with a school. They did make an exception where you still could do some things online, but you're still, if you are in that school, you're still there. So our custodians in schools, our lunch people in the schools, Our bus drivers that bring them to a school qualify. And we've worked directly with the state to identify the number of employees that we have that meet this criteria. Now, if you remember, I said that I felt there was some flaws in how this bill came about. And again, if you remember looking back and if you're reading the papers, there was quite a tug of war, quite a little political battle playing out between some of the legislators who were living in the Salt Lake area or in that area that were getting a lot of feedback from parents of frustration because the students in the Salt Lake School District were not in person, and they had not been allowed to be in person the entire year. And this COVID-19 bonus was really, when you saw how it was originally written, was written to really pinpoint and win, so to speak, a political battle right there. They wrote it in there that if you were not providing an opportunity for in-person instruction, you, as an LEA, your teachers did not qualify, and you had to make a change by January. I can't remember the date, middle of January, to qualify. And so they knew that Salt Lake School District would be really in a pickle right there. Their school board would wrestle with some tough decisions. Now, when I saw that, I was a little bit concerned for us because of our river region. I reached out and spoke and was clarified, and this is what I was told. Have you allowed parental input and listened to parental input? And I said, in August, we administered a survey district-wide, and what we learned was what we would call our mountain region, about 85% of our parents wanted to see in-person instruction. In our river region, strong, almost 90 plus, wanted to see a virtual instruction. And so that drove a lot of how we set up the first of the year. And then we have also worked and collaborated very carefully with the Navajo tribal leaders. And in that process, they said that's not exactly what's playing out in Salt Lake. You still will have no problem, you'll still qualify, because you have reached out as a district and tried to provide what the public wants to see. They tried to say that's not, in their opinion, what Salt Lake School District Board of Education was doing. They believed there was a strong majority that wanted in person, and they were not being listened to. So that played out, but because there was only so much money and they wanted to win out, they wrote the bill that it only reflected school level. And that's how it finished, that's how it ended. And there's been a lot of concern across the state, and I'm aware of multiple districts that are going to try to do things to fill the gap and say, we know we have district level personnel that we think have also been greatly affected by this COVID pandemic. As the superintendent of this district, I could speak profoundly that the COVID pandemic is certainly affected and been a tremendous challenge for all of our employees. And to leave out our district level employees, both licensed and non-licensed, I really struggle with that. I feel badly if that's the way things settle. You are aware, even last spring, when we heard of the stories of the lunch of our food service program and how our director there had to try to figure out how to when her orders came in, they were only 50% filled, and how she literally was in tears trying to figure out how she would feed students in the next few days, and got very creative. Our transportation would not be included. All of our mechanics over here would not be included. They've increased all of their work hours, their cleaning, all of the things that they do. Our maintenance has been so involved in everything, our maintenance department, in also cleaning the buildings and the things they've done in the buildings, and running PPE around and being involved. Technology would not be included. And what the pandemic has done for technology and supporting teachers and instruction is just off the charts. Our HR office and the business office with what we've done in so many different directions. Anyway, I know you know this, but I would make I'm going to ask the board if they would consider, and I do know this for a fact, that we've also had some substantial savings in some areas. This pandemic has allowed us to save some money. Areas of travel. Our cars have sat this year, and we have saved tremendous dollars in gas and PD and travel costs, motel costs. We have virtually attended everything, which meant we have not been on the road and attending those type of meetings and conferences. I have gone to Salt Lake. I don't know if I've been to Salt Lake this year. I have been. I don't think, I've been to Provo once. But yeah, that's just unheard of for my schedule. I usually am in Salt Lake twice a month, all year long. And it's reflected in everything. In our area of athletics, we set aside money for our free and reduced lunch students. Well, our entire river region has not participated this year. There's been tremendous savings. There's been tremendous savings in a number of areas. We did look into this. I had Matt looking, what are we talking if we were to bridge the gap and be similar to other districts? This district board make a decision to pay our district employees out of district funds. It would be in the range of $75,000 to $80,000. And Matt has an actual number if you want the actual number, but and I know we can find that in savings if the board would elect to use those savings, and that way it would not in any way impact future budgets or cause us to go into the hole. Anyway, want to add to that?
If I could just add, just to echo, the piece of legislation was a very politically motivated piece of legislation. Depending on which side of that you're on, with good intentions or ill intentions, either way, it put, at the next externality, districts in a really difficult spot. I've sat in the UASBO meetings as well as the UPARA meetings the last couple of months, and when this has been discussed, and across the board, I can think of one district, two districts that are not committed to holding everyone harmless, so to speak, in this situation, simply because, I mean, the motivating factor is, yeah, they deserve it. You know, our technology department, our food service department, our transportation, the staff in the district office, absolutely, everybody has been pushed to the limit. But the simple fact is, not doing so would create a level of animosity, a level of frustration that would have a far greater financial consequence than being able to use this money, which we can. I have looked at it. Ron and I have worked at it. We are not asking for the school board to extend their budget or pull this out of reserves. It is within this year's fiscal budget to do this, and I think I just again ask with the superintendent, and I appreciate everything you guys do, but I just feel that it is critical for morale and it is well deserved. So it would also be my recommendation.
Be aware that the money we will see from the first piece of legislation to take care of all of our school employees is well over $700,000 we will be receiving. That will be paid out in the end of March.
And we actually did receive that money, so
We have
it's here.
received it, so.
Any comments? Okay, Nielsen, Lucille, any comments? Okay. All right, we'll go down to number 11. We've gone over the policies, the RO.
Okay, well, let me just update the board really quickly. We had a very exciting day on Monday. We had probably 20 guests with us, some very important dignitaries with us. We had Superintendent Sid Dixon. We had members of her working staff, especially Sarah Young, who's worked so closely with our district staff. We had the governor's educational specialist, Brittany. Is anybody going to help me with that? I forget names sometimes. It's Brittany. She was great. She's brand new. It was nice to let her come down here and really see San Juan School District. But we had a number. We had the UETN office, Ray Timothy and his staff. So we had a very impressive group. We know that with COVID and everything, we probably wouldn't get our chapter house presidents, and when they were invited, but we'll work with them later to make. And I did meet with them virtually yesterday at the Utah Commission, but we'll make efforts to let them see it firsthand as well. But we were able to have an overview of the project, really see the towers that we built, the large towers, the medium-sized towers, all the way down to the houses, answer questions, and then get in vehicles if they chose and go have a look in the field and actually drive and see all of this in person. It was a nice day. There are a couple of articles that you'll see. I know the San Juan Record has one, and And I think there's another on
KUER.
KUER is also out, and so you'll see a little bit of positive publicity. The thing I really want the board to know and to understand at this point is, first of all, there's been tons of work going into this, and I want to recognize that that work's been done, and we've got a great staff that's worked so hard. But also that new things are always jumping up in this project, and we're facing them as they come. And one of the things that's going to be very important as we go forward is that we are never seen as a competitor to free enterprise and to a commercial company coming in and providing high-speed, affordable internet in any of our areas, either in our river areas. That would be a wonderful day if and when that is really affordable and very effective. There is some, to some degree, we have some of that playing out now. But we don't want to be seen as a competitor because it could rise to the level of even the regulations and the criteria established in us receiving an E-rate on our internet and those kind of things. There's just a lot of little very important details that we've got to stay ahead of and watch. And it seems like more and more some of these are coming up, and we are certainly wrestling with them and trying to stay ahead of them. But I just want, the day may come, and I want everyone to realize that if we are seen as a competitor, if there are homes that have an opportunity to purchase internet, it's right there now, fiber's in the area, the day may come where we say this is no longer a service that we will provide. That now we have bridged that gap. And if that had already been the day, we would not have needed this bridge in between. And we're fairly confident that in some places that might happen in the near future. There's places that are much more likely to have access to high-speed, affordable, accessible internet. When you start looking at some of the places we have been able to send this signal, and around plateaus, around mesas, down hills, to a house here, 8 miles that way, it's probably going to be years, if ever, before a commercial company wants to somehow figure out how to provide that service all the way out there. And so we're just going to have to work this as we go forward and be aware that there's a lot of issues playing out here, and we're going to try to be very aware of the regulations and the laws, and we're going to try to make sure we stay in appropriate ground. So I don't want anyone to think, and I thought it's important we talk about this a little bit, because there might be the idea that we're building a system that's going to be here for the next 20 or 30 years, or 15 or 20 or 30 years. I think we don't know that. We don't know. I have no idea. There could be some places in the county that in 15 years there's still no accessible internet, and maybe this has benefited them for that long. But there could be some homes in some areas that in the next 2 years has high-speed internet. So anyway, I just want to update the board again on that and just say it is very exciting. We are going to be presenting virtually again to the Utah State School Board tomorrow morning. They've asked us to highlight. They have like a 10 or 15 minute educational highlight, and they've asked us to jump on, and they've sent us some links after they were here on Monday. So our district will be highlighted with the state school board, and that'll be nice for them to kind of see some of the same information. But we are very excited about it. I think for the most part, as we bring more of these homes in, this is going to be, in my opinion, an absolute major change in our efforts to educate kids down the road in the future. And until that high speed comes in and they can buy it for their home, we now still know that we can provide access to digital curriculum and digital resources, and that's never been possible before. It's really, and the way education has evolved, we lean on digital access and digital resources predominantly now. So it's just really timely. It's very exciting. Anyway, I just want the board to be aware of that.
Well, and we actually saw that in progress in that high school, in Pine Horse High School. And I mean, the numbers were minimal, but there was a few students that were on that actually had access to those students. And especially when you saw for that house, the first home that was live, it is in the middle of nowhere. So
Yeah.
it was pretty It's pretty exciting.
We
So
went and looked at
you
it.
did a great job, so thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to our highly effective teachers.
Again, this is legislation that was passed, a good 4 or 5 years ago. We've been participating in this. This, if you remember, is when we have teachers that get a 70% growth, student improvement, student growth percentage. They then qualify for a bonus, up to a $5,000 bonus. It usually doesn't quite reach that because they have a pot of money and they divide it by how many qualify. But it's been in the range of about $4,200 the last 3 or 4 years. And in some years, we've printed out a big check. We've had a big check. I don't know if you might remember. We've gone into classrooms and surprised them. And this year we have 12 that have qualified. Their names are not on here because I wanted to just ask the board how you wanted to proceed with this. It's my thinking, with it being pandemic year and there being concerns from all over the different perspectives on it, that maybe next month it might be appropriate for me to either invite them to come in person to board meeting or to virtually attend board meeting, and we would recognize them that way, similar to what we do with the San Juan's Quest Award.
If we do the virtual, can we actually do it where we can see all of their screens? Is that possible, Aaron? Or do we just have to do it?
No, I think we could work that out if that's what you want to do.
I mean, not like you have nothing to do.
No, we
No,
can do that.
I don't wanna put a lot on your plate, but if they chose to, it'd be nice to see their face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we could do that. So if that's a possibility at all, I mean, what do you guys think?
We do that.
Can we do a Zoom?
Oh, yeah, Zoom?
It's
Yeah,
easy enough.
maybe we could do
And
that. If
just
it's
as-
easy enough.
Just a side note on this program, we do participate and we do match the funds between us and the state are matched for this bonus. And be aware that the state, the new legislation that was just passed provides brings quite a few more teachers that could now qualify. It brings in K3, or maybe it's 1 through 3, first, second, and third, and through DIBELS, and through some of the other testing measures, they now can qualify. So be aware that they're increasing always, which may decrease the amount of the bonus in the long run, but might also increase our amount to participate, so just be aware of that.
But to clarify, this incentive is based off of 19 data, correct?
2 years, the data has to be
So it's
in
not
place 2
like-
years, and they have to still be working for you full-time. And so we've had a couple of educators that qualified by data, but we're not still, either they have to be working for you or they have to be working for another effective poverty school that qualifies. So, but we've had a couple of educators that qualified that were no longer meet the criteria, so they didn't receive the bonus.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Okay, business office update from our interim. Do you want Matt to start that? Or
Yeah,
you
if you'd like to.
However you wanna do
Great.
it.
Okay, so the three main points that I just want to bring to your guys' attention, we have 3 RFPs out right now. We have an RFP out for the audit services, and it actually has closed, and we will start to evaluate that. I believe it's actually scheduled tomorrow for our committee to meet and evaluate those responses and select a audit firm to go forward for the next 5 years. We were able to get the RFP out for Albert R. Lyman Middle School addition. That is open till the end of the month, at which point we'll be evaluating that and hopefully selecting a contractor. And then lastly, we have an invitation for bid on our lawn care service here in Blanding and Monticello that is out, just for you guys to be aware of.
So that expired.
That has expired, so it will be out, and that is also a 5-year contract.
Okay.
Couple things that I would also bring the board attention to. We are still working through the compensation and business regarding the insurance company on the hailstorm that came through. We've had them come visit. We're working carefully with them. We're in the process of now getting bids. We've had them come down and give us estimates of what they will pay for. Now we get bids, and we then put those two together, and we can get people working to replace all of our damaged. Much of our damage is actually our AC and heating units that are on top of our buildings. but some of it's roofing as well. That said, we are also looking at Bluff, the former Bluff Elementary School is also included in that, so we're looking to any damage that might be included in that building as well. And then the other issue that we're working very carefully with that's really became kind of tricky is that we don't have, right now we don't have access to water the football field and the practice football field in Montezuma Creek at White Horse High School. That is because of Elk Petroleum, who has been wonderful to work with in all regards, but their method of retrieving the oil out of those wells has changed. They have to use different methods when they get towards the bottom of a little deeper into the wells, which is where they're at with the life cycle of that oil field. And it requires more water. And they have tanks of water that they have to have a reserve on hand. And we have found sometimes in the recent months where between our use and their use, they have not had sufficient water to meet their needs. And of course, they need to meet their needs. It's very important. So we've talked about some solutions. This is a problem that came to my attention after, that I received this assignment, and some things changed, and I realized that it had kind of just been maybe set aside. We are right now, I've been able to meet with Elk Ridge Petroleum. They are willing to explore any possibilities. If we can't find an acceptable solution, that field is going to be really hard and very dry and dead and hard by next fall, when we hope football is back. And so this is a problem that is timely. We are looking at the possibilities of maybe using water rights from other entities. And I don't know that I've not really gone tight and done anything up tight enough that I want to mention any names, but we are looking at all possible entities that might have unused water rights, and then we could possibly use Elk Petroleum's infrastructure to take the water of those water rights and move them up. And there's a possibility that we might have to construct our own tank, and we'll look at that and see, or maybe we'll look at what they have in their infrastructure. They're willing to work with us in any way. But if we could obtain some extra water rights and use their infrastructure to go bypass the highway, because they have all the infrastructure to move it past the highway, and then they move it up on the hill, and then gravity feeds, it comes down into our system, and because it's gravity fed down, it has pressure. We'd like to still be able to utilize that, but we've got to find some water rights. The other option is to drill a well, and we have some history of trying to drill a well, and it gets very interesting as I've learned more, because anyone can file. You can drill a well, there's no problem with that, and you can find out if there's water, which we've tried in a couple places and not been successful. But even if you do find water, that's the easy part. The hard part is using the water. Then you have to go through a public process, and anyone in the area can file an appeal against you using the water if they feel like it will affect the aquifer and the amount of water that's used. And so it's very political. You have to go through quite a process. And we've actually drilled a couple wells. I've reached out to a couple of drillers who I've been able to research that we have drilled wells in the past, and they kind of don't give me a lot of encouragement or a lot of confidence that we will find water, suitable water, so on our property. So anyway, we're going to explore all options, but I want the board to know that is playing out, and we're trying to solve that timely, because it will be very quickly before we're around next fall. And if it's an unsafe situation on that football field, that will be quite a big problem. So,
Any questions for the superintendent or Matt? Okay.
I do.
Go ahead, Lucille.
Okay, what about artificial grass?
we have looked into artificial grass. That's a great question. The cost and the maintenance, I've had Mr. Red, Kendrick Red's looked into that quite a bit, and he has let me know that the cost, the maintenance, the amount of sand that might develop on the you have to keep it clean, you have to vacuum it, and he just doesn't think we could even come close to keeping up with it cost-wise. But that's exactly what I said.
There's a lot of sandstorm down there.
Yeah.
Right.
All All right, well, you'll keep us updated. So-
Yes.
Okay, we have 45 minutes until public comments, so I would like to make the suggestion that we go into closed session to discuss personnel only. So, Mary, do you want a roll call?
Do I want to make a motion?
Or make the motion? Yes, sorry.
I move to go into closed session to discuss personnel.
Second.
Second by Steve. Okay, roll call. Thank you.
Mary Shumway, yes.
Steve Black, yes.
Lori Mon, yes.
Michelle Cody, yes?
Are you with us, Nelson? We've lost Nelson, haven't we,
Okay.
Lucille?
All right, we are going to go into closed session. That was unplugged, and I've got it plugged back in. Is it in?
Okay, that's good, because I was wondering where our audio was.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to make some comments?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
If you change your mind in the next few minutes,
Are they on?
Let me try to text her real fast.
Let's just do a sweet job while you're doing that. All right.
She had to go to Farmington. Somebody went to Juan a couple weeks ago. And they called this morning and said they're sitting on real property. That's where she got.
Okay. Are we ready to go, Erin?
We're ready.
Okay, we welcome you. Welcome to the public portion of our comment. And this is our favorite part. It's our recognition awards. And so we have two tonight. We have Laurie Randall and Tony Espon. So we're going to have Laurie come up first. And you get to be the center of attention right now.
Because you know I love that.
I know.
Yes? Yeah. Okay, you hold this then. Congratulations.
Okay. Laurie Randall, so she works in Monticello Elementary School. I would like to nominate Laurie Randall for the San Juan Sweet Job Award. She is a fabulous teacher who understands the standards and can successfully lead her students to mastery of the 4th grade core. She works tirelessly to ensure that each student is meeting the expectations set for her class and the school. Families and students have already expressed their sadness of the fact that she will be retiring this upcoming year. I have even heard pleas from parents for her to return for one more year. I think that's a no, right?
No.
Not only is she vital to the success of her class, but she also contributes in multiple capacities to the success of Monticello Elementary. She serves on both the school community council and the school leadership team. When Laurie leaves, she will know that MES is a better place because of the contributions she made while she was there, and she was nominated by Jenna Olson, the principal at Monticello Elementary.
I want to know the color coordination for this
Oh,
picture.
I called her.
Thank you.
Amazing teacher.
You got that? Oh.
One of our best ever.
I have a smile and a mask, so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, Tony Espin. All right, Tony, you gotta hold this.
I get to?
Yes.
Tony Espin, Monticello High School. Tony has worked tirelessly. Yeah, probably. For 32 years, providing opportunities and instruction to students at MHS. Through his guidance, students have achieved at the highest levels, which include multiple state championships in volleyball and one in basketball. Tony is passionate about his subject and has been a staple of consistency throughout his years of service. He is the epitome of Buck pride and will be missed at MHS as his ventures into retirement. And I'd like to add to that Tony is one of my best friends, and I've watched him in the classroom and on the court, and Other than all the technicals he's gotten over the years, I can vouch for him being outstanding. I really appreciate all he's accomplished. So, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
We thank both of you for coming and your hard work to our school district, and you will be greatly missed. And so, if you would like to stay for the rest of our board meeting, you're welcome to, or you're welcome to leave. And so, we'll excuse anyone that wants to be excused right now.
There you go. Your choice.
Are you all headed to patio for dinner?
Already been there.
Oh, been there.
Thanks, Dad.
Bye,
All right.
Casey.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. See ya.
Thanks, Larry. Really
Bye,
appreciate
Ellen.
it. Appreciate everything.
You killed it again.
Oh, it's good enough. Okay,
Oh, man.
we are to the public comment section of our meeting, and so we allow 3 minutes for public comment. If you have a question that needs basically a yes or no clarification, we can offer that. Otherwise, you are referred to the superintendent if you prefer, based on your sheet at the bottom, that you would like to meet with him regarding your comments. So this just allows you to come up and make your comment. So Stacy, you get to be first. And if you'll come up to the front so everyone can hear you, please, and then I'll set my timer. And then I'll stand when that timer's up.
Okay, can I sit?
Sure.
Okay, my name is Stacy Harrison. I'm going to speak fast so that I can get through a lot. I live in Blanding. On the petition that I sent to you guys last night, we gathered those signatures in literally just a few days. More signatures coming in today. Strangers have been seeking me out and begging to sign. I had multiple people talk to me about their children's respiratory problems and how hard it has been for them to wear masks every day. One lady told me that she tried to get a medical exemption for her kids to not wear masks due to their severe respiratory problems. She was told that the risk of complications from COVID outweighed the risk of them not being able to breathe all day at school. Her family did end up getting the virus. She said it affected them like a mild cold. Then her kids had to go back to school in their masks all day where they can barely breathe. I want you to really think about that for a minute. Think about these young children not being able to get a good breath of air their entire day of school, 5 days a week. Like, if that was your kid or your grandchild that was having a hard time breathing. Our children's mental health is a conversation that has been brushed under the rug during this whole pandemic. We are all expected to wear masks to save that fictitious person that we might get sick if we don't wear one, but we have actual children having actual mental health crises. They're being ignored or minimalized. I personally know of a local teenager that had a suicide attempt a few months ago. This is a vibrant and usually happy and a super friendly kid. I don't know what part masks did or did not play in his attempt. I don't know. But how long are we going to keep taking this risk? I want you to remember these words. The way that we handle this pandemic here locally will have long-term effects on the lives of our youth, the youth that you are supposed to be representing. I think you should ask our teachers. I think you'd be shocked how many of them would love to get rid of masks altogether and feel completely safe and comfortable in the classrooms without them. Our community has been lucky enough to receive an abundance of vaccine doses. Anyone over 16 in our community who is high risk for complications from the virus, or anyone who just feels any level of nervousness about getting the virus, has had the opportunity to be vaccinated at this point. So if now isn't the time to let our kids breathe freely, when will it be? Should we all sit back and assume the powers that be will decide that that magical time is in August when school starts up again? I love Mary's idea of at least exploring other options, like masked classrooms versus unmasked classrooms if we get to that point in the fall. In the meeting earlier today, you all mentioned liability and this isn't our mandate. Everybody loves to always act like our hands are tied or your hands are tied. But if you can't and won't fight for your local constituents, why do we even have local representation? You love to worry about liability, but what about when half of the school was sick with the flu last winter? Schools weren't shut down, faces weren't covered, nobody sues from dying from the flu, you can't. People also die from the flu. I mentioned in my email that I have seen a huge change in my third grader's attitude towards school in the past few months. She is the most carefree little sweetheart. She's always loved school, and it breaks my heart to see her suddenly fighting going to school every morning. As rural Americans, we're getting sick of the phrase, "our hands are tied." They're only tied as long as we keep letting them be tied.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Nico, are you ready?
I appreciate.
Sorry, just 1 second. If you didn't want to come, we just want to
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
I appreciate Superintendent Nielsen and Vice President Black's comments earlier today. I do want to say that we have existing laws before the health orders that actually contradict the health orders. And I have given you several of those. In December and January, I gave you specific laws and regulations that are being broken by forcing the kids to be tested. In New York, the Board of Education was sued for requiring testing, and they are no longer requiring any testing for anything, including extracurricular activities. When I was here in January, I read parts of a paper in which the CDC states that over a 50-year period of testing and doing studies on masks, they have found no evidence that masks do anything to stop spread of influenza virus. Just on March 5th, the CDC issued a new study that shows that 100 days after a mask mandate is put in place, it reaches its peak effectiveness. And on average, that might result in 1.9% fewer deaths. So as of March 8th, 0.062% of Utah's population had died of or with COVID. By using the CDC's numbers, Utah's death rate might have reached 0.063% if we had never required any masks at all. That's one more person out of 10,000 that might have died with COVID without any mask mandates. And every death is a tragedy, and we do not want any more deaths. But the CDC has not taken into account the 9,999 other people who are affected by these masks. Many other doctors and mental health experts have done well-documented studies, peer-reviewed studies, that show that there are harmful effects both on health and psychology with masks. The CDC, the NIH, and Dr. Fauci himself have all told us repeatedly that the evidence overwhelmingly shows that children and teenagers are not spreading the disease in any significant way. And that fact has been corroborated by the illegal testing that's been done here in the schools. We've been told over and over that our job is to protect the most vulnerable population, and that is not the elderly people who are dying. The most vulnerable population is the children who are going to live with the effects of the masks for the rest of their lives. The health effects, the social effects, the mental, the intellectual effects, they're going to be going on way longer than we're alive. And that doesn't even take into consideration the horrible legal precedent that we're setting. As the people that we've chosen to represent our most vulnerable population, we're not asking you to charge into battle with your guns blazing. What we're asking you to do is to sit with your head held high on the front of the bus, because you know that that's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Henderson, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
My name is Wayne Henderson, and I have a high school student going to school here at the San Juan High School. He's been going here since a freshman year, plays sports, does a lot of activities after school. My concern is with wearing the mask, social distancing as well. From what I see, what the school board has been doing, what the district has been doing, and what the state of Utah governor has been saying is protecting our families, protecting our children, protecting teachers, protecting all substitutes, whoever has to go ahead and go in for the other teachers that could be sick or could be positive tested. Now I know at the beginning of the year, sports, I knew a couple of people off the football team that was positive. They got quarantined. So was the cheerleaders, and so was the administration, and some of the teachers at the high school and elementary. But I see a decline when my son comes home every day wearing his mask and telling me how his day was, which was great. Everybody wears their mask, everybody takes care of everybody, social distancing and everything else. Why ruin a good thing now? Everything is going so well for everybody else. And I understand what's going on. I understand where everybody else goes ahead and gets their research papers from everything else. Truthfully, I haven't got the shot. My family hasn't got the shot. I know people that got the shot. I know people that ended up in the hospital with shots. They have allergic reaction. Now, my concern is, why not just continue wearing masks, social distancing? It seems like it's working. It seems like everybody's getting better after that. So why take them off now and let this pandemic start all over again? Just because you got the shot doesn't mean you're immune to it. It's still out there, and it still affects everybody in some way. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you got anything you want to read? So we have some that came in electronically, and Eva's going to just read those.
The first one is signed by Lonnie Harris, J.B. Harris, Hillary Crofts, and Della Moses, 4 parents of school kids in the Blanding area. It says, "Dear school board members, we respectfully disagree with the petition to end mask requirements indoors at San Juan School District schools. However, we ask if masks are currently required at recess, you would consider removing that requirement if possible." The second comment is from Jim and Luann Hook in Bluff. They state, "Please realize that there are a whole bunch of non-vocal parents that are very supportive of following guidelines about masks until the all clear is officially sounded. Keep doing a good job." And the last one is from Keena Mallory, also from Bluff. She states, "I'm writing to urge the school board to return all students to schools in person immediately throughout the county. I am particularly concerned about the fear-mongering and anti-science sentiment expressed by teachers and principal at Bluff Elementary. Any adult who wants a vaccine can get one in San Juan County and on the reservation, unlike the majority of the nation's school districts. The CDC has said repeatedly that students can return in person relatively safely and in schools with hardly any students social distancing. This should certainly not be the problem in those big cities. According to your official counts, dozens of students have disappeared from Bluff Elementary this year. Denying education to those missing students by caving to political pressures not to open the schools is racist. In this case, the Navajos influencing these decisions are hurting their own children. Unfortunately, the teachers in Bluff play off of fears also. I am not saying that the students will learn much with this school run mostly by incompetent teachers who fail state progress measures, but at least the students will have their progress monitored instead of sitting home with no internet or access to education. I am a taxpayer in Bluff, and as my representatives, you have no right to continue this racist and unequal approach to the education in the county. Sincerely, Kaina Mallory.
Okay, is there any others? Oh, I did have one from you, didn't I?
For me?
Paper.
of paper didn't have a comment on it though.
Okay, did you wanna come up to
Yeah,
the
can I
front?
come up and talk?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, I do have.
I'm Kelly Shumway. I just want to reiterate what Stacy and Miko said. So everybody has the opportunity to have vaccines now, especially in our county. Like she says, they're even giving it to 16-year-olds if they want it. So my concern is if we don't get rid of the masks now, when are we going to get rid of the masks? It just seems like this is the perfect time to, because yeah, if we're not going to get rid of them now, then there's no reason when August comes and we go back to school that they'll say, oh, just keep wearing them. So that's my biggest fear. So that's why I kind of want, like I was just going to wait till the next year to see what happens, but I would like to get this problem fixed now, and I want the attention now, because right now is a good time for us to get rid of the mask mandates at school, especially when the governor's gonna lift the mask mandate on April 10th, but for some reason he doesn't think we should lift the mask mandate for our kids in school. And I don't think that's right, because why should we make our young kids and our teenagers wear masks for 6 hours a day, but the rest of the public doesn't have to wear masks? So as our representatives, I would like you guys to fight for our county and bring, I don't know who you guys would talk to, the same thing where she talked about, like, you guys are always just saying your hands are tied, you guys can't do anything, but I would like it, I don't know if you guys can take polls within the community, if that the whole community feels like we should get rid of our mask mandates because it's a good time since everybody has their vaccinations if they want them. If there's something you guys can do, I'd like you guys to exhaust all resources if you can to just get around these mask mandates if you can, around the governor's orders, even though he's already going to lift them for the rest of the public. Why can't he lift them for our schools, or why can't we decide what we want to do for our own children? And if he wants to come fight our school district, then maybe they should come to us and fight us. Because that's, as parents, that's where we're getting to, is we're ready to fight for our children. And we don't want to have to do it next school year. We're going to do it now so we don't have to do it for next school year. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. All right, any others? Okay. That concludes our public portion since I don't see any more comments. So you are welcome to stay while we finish our meeting, the agenda, or you're welcome to leave. So we'll leave that open for you. Okay. Okay, so I have Lucille, but we don't have Nelson.
I just want to say thanks, parents. Anytime we have parents here, we appreciate having parents here and being interested in your
Are you with us, Lucille?
children's education. And whatever side of anything you're on, we always want parents interested. So
I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you, Lucille.
Is Nelson there? No.
Do we have Nelson? Are you with us, Nelson?
I think we lost
And
him.
also, some of them missed, some of them were here earlier. Masks at recess, kids will no longer be wearing masks at recess starting tomorrow.
So I understood that it wasn't ever a rule,
No,
but the
it
elementary
was.
was choosing to implement it?
It
Is
was
that
a
correct?
rule.
Okay.
Changed in March
Okay.
1st.
Okay, so I need a
So no
motion
more
to
masks.
approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, motion by Steve,
Second, Lucille.
okay, discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, down to our action items. So, probably have to approve each one of these. All right, motion to approve San Juan School District Policy 2310.
I move to approve the proposed change to policy 2310.
Okay, motion by Steve,
Mansfield.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes. These are so new to us, and if they contradict the contracts that we approved, then I think we need to spend some time researching which way we really want to go if we were not thorough in looking at the contracts in compared to what prior board members had put into place and the reasons for the actual policy. I think this is premature to just approve these and make the changes. We haven't gone through them thoroughly, and all those contradiction, or what the contradictions are. I just think we need to look at this carefully before we just.
So I'm gonna let Matt speak to that.
So in response to that, this process is new to you, but it is a process. This is the first time it's come before you, that it's been part of this ongoing process with auditing our policy. And this recommendation comes with the full support of our legal counsel. This is how they're advising us to move forward, because we're inviting ourselves to be open for conflict. So I'm bringing that to you as a recommendation that was brought to me by our legal counsel. So that there has been thorough research put into it as part of our audit, and this is the recommendation that the legal counsel brought for you guys' consideration.
Okay, well, I still maintain that we need to, a month to look at this and look at maybe some oversight on our part when we approved contracts and didn't look at that. But based on the fact that we currently have contracts that are contradictory, maybe we need to go that direction. And
will that information on did you read the policies? Will that information on the policy clarify what you need to know? Otherwise, you're gonna have to go pull the contracts to read them.
right, which I feel like we haven't been provided all of the information to have those contracts in place and see what the contradictions are, and that what it was and what is now, and the long-term implications to the school district, that should be thoroughly looked into by each of us should make those considerations instead of just saying, okay, let's
If
just
the
do
board
what
would
we're.
like to see it
what
at
we're
that
advised.
depth, we could certainly provide that.
I think we're gonna have to.
I think on all
Lucille,
four of
do
these,
you have
we
any
just need to
comments?
do our due diligence. It's our job as board members to see exactly what it is that we overlooked in not, in passing or agreeing to contracts that did contradict our policies. That was overlooked maybe by administration as well as each of us as board members. And I think we have a responsibility to look at that.
Do you wanna comment on that?
Yeah, I think that the terms of what we're talking about with termination and so forth, I think it needs to be specified in one place or the other, and not try to bring up two documents that specify anything. We need to decide, okay, is it going to be specified in policy, and then the contract will just refer to policy and not try to spell anything out, or are we just gonna get rid of it in policy and let the contract spell everything out? So,
Right, but we haven't looked at both those documents and we don't even
But
have them provided.
Is it, I mean,
for
that's
us.
the understanding that that's what that's gonna do. What we say in policy has to be reflected in that contract. That's what these are saying.
So we overlooked that and approved contracts that conflicted with our current policy, and now we're being asked to just go ahead and approve the new policy, and I plan to, it's just our responsibility to do our due diligence and look at those carefully. We don't have all of it provided for us tonight. So I'm going to suggest that we have those provided for us as soon as possible, so that we have a month before our next board meeting. Because I know that these board packets are put together as quickly as you can to provide for us, but it gives us just a few days once we get things. And then if we get something and it's not complete and we don't have all of the information, and 3 days later it depends on if you count weekdays, but 5 days later, then we're expected to just, we haven't reviewed it thoroughly, in my opinion,
So just to clarify, so my understanding is that you took those contracts and we went off what was in those contracts to create this cleanliness, this
Exactly.
policy. So
Exactly.
you're saying, Mary, you wanna go read the contracts all over again to make sure.
Yes, they should be provided right now in our board agenda, so we can look and say, oh, we inadvertently approved a
that's how it
contract that was in
works.
direct conflict with the policy that the district had that was set into place by a board.
So if
And
I,
we just have a responsibility to look at those things.
if I could, maybe this would have been, we went through those, very quickly as part of the discussion items, and I think a lot of this could have been alleviated, throughout that process where we could have specifically, and we definitely can go into the details of that. But again, just to reiterate, our legal counsel is saying exactly what, Board Member Black said. Either do the contract or do the policy, but don't do both, and we recommend you do the contract. So,
But as board members, let's look at them. We have one provided and not the other. And we had, you know, five days ago, this was on the radar for the first time. And it's always a little bit of a red flag if, here it is, we gotta, you know, we're in a hurry, we gotta pass it. Why not have all of us look at it thoroughly? Why not research it? Why not?
Steve?
No, I would speak to that I don't think there's anything time sensitive to it,
Okay,
so
let's look at it.
we don't want the board to.
So Matt, will you just attach the two contracts so they can be reviewed with the policy?
I think
Or can we? Can we?
I think you have a motion that you have to finish
Yes,
out first.
we do.
And then, we can.
But I guess we can, with the, contracts. All right, so, all in favor? Okay. All right, the motion died, so we'll just move 1 through 5 to next board meeting, and will you attach the contracts?
And it's not, just to clarify, it's not time sensitive, it's not a hurry up. It's simply just housekeeping, so at your leisure.
Okay, but, yeah. But I think what we do need to say is if,
Thank you.
I guess what I'm saying is if they are giving us if we're gonna take the time to do this, let's at least put a time frame on, so we're not 6 months down the road, someone's saying, well, I just didn't have time, I didn't have time. I really don't wanna drag this out for 6 months, for the fact that if we're going to really do this and do due diligence, let's do it in a timely manner, so that this is not just ongoing. So we take the initiative and do it, if that's okay. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't expect that next month we would have to, you know, there may be some questions.
Sure.
When we get together the next time to sort things out, it gives us some time. I think we've gone to a point where we see something and we pass it, where that's not what I've been used to for the many years that I served on the board, that we saw something one month, it came back again the next month, we had an opportunity to discuss more, and then we used to do the,
Well,
you
but
know,
see, we wanted
pass on
to
a
pass
first
on
and
a
a second.
final.
And that's okay too, that we don't have 1, 2, and 3 and a final, but the time period is essential for board members to really do our research. We work with people who do this every day for a living, and they're working on it every day, and so they're up to speed. And then we can just say, okay, whatever you think, we think. Or we can take the time and take 2 or 3 months to pass things. Or, you know, we can't always say whatever you think, we think too, but I don't think that's the best process.
All right, let's move to number 6 then. Supplemental educator COVID-19 stipend. I need a motion.
Why don't we kind of recap these a little bit for our audience, because they never hear our discussion.
Well, then we
And
have to
so-
go back, we can bring that discussion up with the motion.
Oh, that's right.
But we don't wanna
We
spend,
can also bring
but
it
we
up
don't wanna
with the
spend
title.
an hour recapping everything. So, number 6, supplemental educator COVID-19 stipend. I need a motion.
I move to approve the supplemental educator COVID-19 stipend with the caveat that after a second, that I'd like the superintendent to give a recap of this.
So I need a second for the motion.
Second.
Okay. you wanna give a 30-second?
Yeah, a quick recap is in the Senate Bill 1 education funding for the state of Utah, there was money placed in it to pay for a COVID-19 supplemental stipend for all employees that are in the schools, that are associated directly with schools. So all of your lunchroom, your bus drivers, your custodian, all your teachers, your aides, your classified, it was put in there at a rate of a $1,500 bonus for licensed employees in the schools and $1,000 for the non-licensed employees in the schools. San Juan School District will receive over $700,000, already have received that to pay out that stipend to the schools. Many districts, and I am asking for the same consideration that many districts are, that, well, I guess I need to back up one step further. The bill was written, in my opinion, in a political maneuver to wrestle Salt Lake School District to require them to bring their students back to in-person instruction. Their students have not been allowed to have in-person instruction all year, and there was a feeling among the legislative body, or at least a number of legislators, that there was a majority of parents that wanted their students to be in person in instruction, and they were being denied. So in this bill and in this COVID-19 funding, the stipulation was put in place that if a district was not allowing that by January, the end of January, they did not qualify for it. And they knew that that would put a lot of pressure on Salt Lake School District. So it was written with a political motive in mind, and that's why it really focused on the schools. A number of districts, and I'm advocating for the same concern, have felt that there was a flaw, and it very poorly did not recognize the efforts of district staff, and they were being excluded. And district staff also have taken on a substantial workload due to COVID-19. But due to the fact that political little tug of war was playing out, they were not included. So I've asked the Board of Education to, using present savings in this year's budget, which we can identify, to allow us to spend, and I've estimated the cost at $75,000 to $80,000. Our district staff is much smaller than our school staffs across the district, and to pay an equal stipend to district staff that have also, in my opinion, worked substantial hours and taken on extra burdens due to the pandemic and the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's what this is in response to.
Thanks. Any comment? Discussion, I mean? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Lucille?
Aye.
Okay. San Juan School District spend plans and sustainability fee schedule. Any motion?
I move to approve the San Juan School District spend plans and sustainability fee schedule for 2021-22 school year.
Okay, motion by Steve.
I'll second the
Second,
motion.
Lucille.
Okay. All right, discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Provisional contract renewal. I need a motion.
There's a recommended motion on there too, if you'd like to look at that. I know this one can be tricky sometimes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I move to approve the list that has been submitted to us for what is your motion?
It's
Approve the submitted provisional contract list, that's all then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I second the motion.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then the S-Power AES Clean Energy Solar Panels for Monticello. Well, the land, basically, so I need a motion.
I'll make a motion for discussion. I move to approve the request for S power.
Can I make a recommendation? Can I?
Not till after a
Okay.
second.
Okay, I need a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion? So, did you wanna make?
Yeah, my only comment is like, I would think at this point, I would recommend that you authorize, district administration, whether we get a new BA at some point, or Matt or myself, to sit down with them and work out details of an agreement and then bring that back. That would give you some details about making a formal decision for, that would long-term be a commitment.
It's great.
I agree. I think
Yeah.
all of my questions, our discussion was thorough enough for the time period we have, but I have additional questions and things that before I would vote for something like that, I am in favor of the idea that there would be the details worked out, whether or not I would vote in favor or against that, but I generally, I don't see why, we can't,
Okay.
agree to something, so, but I would say, let's see, now I've forgotten what you said, but
Let's just make a vote on that motion, and then we can go with a recommendation. So we
The-
don't have to make a
the
motion on the
yeah, well, the
recommendation.
motion was to approve it, and so.
Yeah, so, do you wanna do that?
So I'm gonna suggest we don't approve it, but
Alright.
we give our administration the ability to
Well,
look
the mo-
into it further.
The motion
And
is
bring
to
it.
approve that, so we need to vote on the motion first. And then we can give a recommendation how we wanna proceed. So all in favor? Okay. Any opposed, I guess? Okay, the motion died, so we are making a recommendation for that discussion to take place with the city of Monticello, yes, because, and we will need something in writing, details and so forth. So if we can kind of set up a timeline with them before next meeting, how that might look.
Or I could bring a proposed, even an agreement or something to
Okay.
the next board meeting.
All right, sounds good, yes?
And
No board action on it.
What do you think?
You-
Yes, it can't be motion. No? Okay, let's just have that recommendation to bring back the information and a possible starting
I
point
want to
with
clarify
it.
that they are just asking us to lease land to them, right? No other expense, we will not, okay.
And that's why that contract kind of needs, lease agreement needs to be written out and then proposed with them and kind of see where we're at before we make that motion for that. Okay.
Yes, that works.
Okay. Let's go to information items.
Yeah, principals meeting is tomorrow, so just be aware of that. You still have attached your graduation and promotion dates, just so for your calendar. End of third quarter is coming right up fast, a couple days, that leads us into.
Have we decided that every school's gonna participate with that?
At this point, we have every school participating in some measure.
Within our river region schools?
There's one that has opted out though, no, there's one that, I think it was like a sixth grade.
It was a, yes.
With the graduation of.
Yeah, with a promotion or
Okay.
something. But please have those on your calendar, and as they get closer, we'll identify who's gonna be in attendance, and we'll go from there. Spring break is next week. The USBA Spring Regional Meeting, a virtual Zoom at 6 p.m. on March 23rd. You've all received an invite to that. And then our next board meeting is April 14th at the district office here. And I'm assuming we'll still be set up exactly like we have been in tonight and other recent meetings.
Okay. All right, and then we're going to need to go back into closed session, so yes?
I think we skipped an action item on the policy concerning insurance.
Did we want to
Did that-
do that?
That was separate from the four that we were discussing.
Employee benefits.
Where we're taking that one line out. And again, we can bring
Okay.
it back, that's not necessarily time sensitive, but it was there as an action item.
You're right.
I would be so much more comfortable if we always see our changes in our policy at least twice, because again, like I said, we have a few days when we first see it, unless there's something that weren't able to have on soon enough, and it is timely because the state's mandating that we, do something, but otherwise, I would like to see it. We don't need to necessarily pass a first reading, but allow us to see it, have, time to ask questions, administration over a month's period. We really changed to doing things like this, and I find myself passing things that I'm not really, aware of,
Okay,
so.
all right, so we need to go back in closed session. We need to, let's do real property first, and then we're gonna have to come back out and go back in for personnel. We've gotta finish up personnel. So, I need a motion to go into closed session for the discussion of purchase, exchange, or lease of real property.
I move to go into closed session, discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, roll call.
Mary Shoma, yes.
Steve Black, yes.
Lori Mon, yes.
Phil Cody, yes?
Okay. All right, so that basically concludes our meeting with the public, and then we have to go back into closed session. So thank you for coming, we appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, for coming.
Thank you.
Lori, have.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
So while we're sitting here, I just